All right, this is getting ready to go live. Testing 1, 2, 3, making sure the sound's good. All right, this is getting ready to go live. Testing 1, 2, 3. All right, we're good to go. We will be live in 2 minutes. Well, we're live right now, but we'll wait for some people to join us. We only got 3 people right now.
I have found that this is really not a high volume time.
No, it's, I think people take a break for lunch and maybe they're taking longer than 30 minutes and good for them, you know?
Absolutely. So I've changed up my presentation for tomorrow and Friday instead of doing this one again because I've done it 3 days.
Okay.
And by the way, so Monday was really the worst. We can just don't use that one for an individual.
Not a problem. Normally, what the norm is, we wait until the last day that person presents and we figure that one is probably the best and we edit that one. But if you're going to change it up into like 2 different ones, just let us know and we can put a video of each up.
Yes, and I think the title was already changed, I think, on the virtual
Okay,
schedule.
then they'll both get their own video on the channel. Great.
I just didn't see a lot of engagement with this. You know, as any good teacher, you need to change it up if you don't have your...
That's very smart, yes. If people aren't engaging, not asking questions in the chat, then maybe you need to change it up. That's a good idea. Obviously an educator.
Yes.
Yes. My wife is upstairs she's an art teacher at Farmer Elementary. So I can hear her a little bit. She's doing a draw with Mrs. Durham lesson. So it's like everybody in the house is broadcasting today. Yes.
Oh, wow. It's changed how quickly we can change our instruction.
Yes.
Needed.
Well, it's 12:30. Welcome back to those of you that are joining us. If you are joining us for the first time or just hopping on for today, please make sure you are signed in using your JCPS account. That way you'll be able to participate in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to post them there in the chat. We'll actually try to answer them live as the show's going on. I'm here today with Rebecca Despain. Did I say your last name right?
You did.
All right, good deal. I like getting that right. So she's going to let us know who she is, tell us a little bit about yourself, what department you work for, and I believe she's going to be talking about Study Island learning paths today.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my presentation and then back it up. I did it again.
You're fine. Actually, while you're getting that up, I know we have some people joining us. There was a technical issue with Study Island recently, correct? I think something about the way Study Island and Clever were talking.
And I believe it's been resolved.
Good.
But if it hasn't, and there's still a question, there's the Study Island classroom that the Study Island lead at each school should have access to, and then they can post that question. But or contact me later. But I think it's been resolved from what I understand.
I think so as well. So if you had those parents or students saying, hey, I'm having issues, tell them to try again today. And I believe all those should be cleared up now.
They are.
Yes.
I'm going to share my screen.
All right. We see your screen sharing.
All right. And now I need to find my closed captions. Oh, I need to get...
Yeah, go to the presentation. There you go. Then go to present mode.
Got it.
And hover down at the bottom. You got it.
All right. Now I've got to go back to the beginning. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
Here we go. All right. So yes, I know, like many of you, I have been exposed to more digital tools these last few weeks than I ever have. And I really enjoyed learning how to use these different tools. But sometimes, just like in the classroom, it can be really overwhelming with all the resources that we have out there to teach with. So today I'm going to focus on a tool that you all have access to, and that's Study Island. Now, two of my teammates have already been presenting about Study Island and the different tools it has. That'd be Ashley Byerly and Samantha Bennett. And they've talked about making tests, creating assignments, using the teacher toolkit and all of its reports. So if you want to see any of those, they are on the previous weeks during the virtual training. You can always just go to Study Island and click on the purple help button, and there are tutorials there as well. But today our focus is going to be on the Study Island, the NWEA report. But first of all, let me just introduce myself a little bit. I am Rebecca Despain, and I am part of the academic MTSS team, and we are under the Division of Teaching and Learning. You have probably heard of Engagement and Behavior MTSS. We are all under the MTSS umbrella, but engagement and behavior are in the Division of Culture and Climate. So our goals for this session is I want to just increase your awareness of this tool, Study Island, that's already in your toolbox. Everybody has access to it, and how you can use it to individualize and accelerate instruction. So we're going to learn how to access the reports that are linked to the learning paths, and then share some ways on how we might use that data from the reports to accelerate personalized learning time. So the NWEA link to Study Island is a link that is purchased by schools. So it was a school decision whether to purchase the link or not. Now I know some schools, if they have access to ExactPath or PathBlazers, those two programs also have a link that they can upload the map report, the data from the map report. So this, everybody has access to Study Island and all of its tools, but you would have had to purchase as a school the link to upload the data. Now on Study Island, it's aligned to the Kentucky standards. The learning paths are automatically created, but just for reading and math. Then those paths are created based on the RIT scores and how they scored. So a student, let's say in math, their learning path, they might be in algebraic thinking at a grade level 3, but in numbers and operations in base 10 placed at a grade level 2. It would just depend on how the RIT scores for on the MAP test. But within the learning path and within each lesson, there are building blocks built in. So if a student is not being successful in the lesson, they will automatically get another activity or a building block to help support mastery of that assigned standard. The students do not know what grade level standard they are working in, so that they don't have to be concerned. I'm in 4th grade and they've got me in 2nd grade work. They do not see the grade level. And also Study Island is another tool that you can use to get the data so that you can monitor the progress, because we know we need to make instructional decisions based on data and whether the tools that we are providing are accelerate learning or they're not being productive, so that we can use the data from Study Island to make those instructional decisions. Now, since that URL uploads student information, I do not have access to I can't do a live demo of using the reports. So I am going to share a portion of a Zoom session presented by Denise Williams. She's an educational consultant from Edmentum. So the section is about 8 minutes long. However, if you would like to see the entire Zoom session, which is about 55 minutes, because she will talk about other tools within this session, you can go to that through the teacher toolkit, the NTI teacher toolkit. So I'm going to show you how we do reach that toolkit. And you go to the toolkit and you go to Study Island. And this is frequently asked questions about Study Island. So again, and ExactPath. So if you are using Study Island or ExactPath and you have questions, you might try this resource first before reaching out. Their answers might be right on here. But if you want to look at the Zoom session for the NWEA link, you'll go to page 3, and it's right here with this question. Can I view a previously recorded session regarding how to use the NWEA map path? And so right here is the link. So we're going to go through this link. And the portion that I want to focus on today with the reports is starts at about minute 17. So I'm just going to move ahead here.
And that's great. I love that there is so much, everything's compiled on the JCPS NTI site. So parents and staff are using just one site to get to a lot of different things.
It's a great resource. So here we go. We'll just listen to that and then we'll come back. And again, if you have any questions, go ahead, put them in the chat and we'll try to answer them.
My teacher page. And next, let's just go straight to why we are really here, and that's the NWEA reports. So I'm going to go to school reports. And as you see, when I click on school reports, there are a host of other reports. Know that there is only one report on this dashboard, and it is labeled NWEA MapLink report. So if you're only working on NWEA with Study Island, this is the report tab here below. All of the other reports here will not work with NWEA, except for one other. Let me say the Blue Ribbon report will work with NWEA as well. But all of the other reports will only come available if you create an assignment, a built test, or a group session. So let's look at NWEA. So I'm going to click on it. Now within NWEA MapLink, there are 3 reports. So I would, as a teacher, if I want to see where all my students are, I will look at class placement first. So NWEA RIT scores have been imported. I want to look at one discipline. So I'm going to choose class placement. I'm going to select my class name. And I can choose math or reading, and I'm going to choose math. I click on view report. So now I'm able to see, you will see a list of all of your students. Now this is my demo account, so there's not a whole lot of data, but you're able to see at least what it will look like. So if you notice my student, Charlie Brown, going straight across, and not only straight across, oops, sorry about that. I clicked on, okay, just want to make sure I'm still in view. Not only looking straight across at the strands and the RIT scores that my student is in, but I'm also looking at the topic, or I should say the domain. So again, I'm in a different state for this demo account. So it's going to be a little bit different than Kentucky domains. So algebra happens to be one, and that's the same. So here's Charlie Brown. He is in 3rd grade. Here's his RIT score. And then based on his RIT score, here is the grade level that he will work on for algebra. Okay. Now, if you want more information about how and the why about this RIT score, you have to look at your NWEA data. This is how far, this is only type of data we're going to get from NWEA. And that will be the RIT score and then the grade level of where that student will work on skills. Next, as you see going straight across, this happens again, this is not the same state, so that's why it's a little bit different. Here's another RIT score. Geometry and measurement is the domain and the grade level that he's working on, and I can look straight across. Now, there's a couple of things I can do. I can click on Charlie Brown's name to look at his learning path, or I can come back up to the top and go to individual student path, keeping with NWEA, and then click on just that one student, Charlie Brown, stick with math, and click on view report. This will allow me to see Charlie Brown's Math NWEA pathway. So he has about 4 different domains he's working on. And underneath each of these domains, as you notice, are the different skills. I can click on standard to see the standard that's covered. And again, if you need to go in, use this data to create your assignments, your practice assignments for a student, you can. So looking at this, he did receive a blue ribbon. So if we're looking at this one session, the time spent, his best session. And the reason why we have the best session is because students can actually click on that skill and do it over if they feel they can get a better score. So it's going to save the student's best session. And then here we see the number correct out of the total and his score. And then you have this grade right here. So you're probably wondering, well, what does that mean? So if you scroll down, this is the grading key. So M means meet standards, and D means does not meet standards. So if I scroll back up to the top.
And that's great, because isn't that how elementary is grading right now, with just meeting and not meeting standards?
Yes, they are.
Yes.
That's true. So that would be helpful.
Compare and order numbers. I can click on the standard. And remember what I mentioned about the remediation? Well, here it is. This is the arrow that's showing me he's getting remediation for compare and order numbers automatically. So if you hover over it like I just did, it calls out exactly what it is. It's remediation, remedial. So he hasn't started that session yet, but I can look at his session where he got that 30% to see what he missed. So here are the 2 sessions he worked on. I'm going to click on view missed, and he missed 7 questions. So if you notice, the X is the one that he got wrong, and this is the correct answer. You can also click on explanation just to get some feedback on that question. And you can go down the list to look at the question that he missed and kind of get an idea of what he was thinking. Okay. So I'm going to go back up to the top. And I can do the same for the 80% and view which ones he missed there as well. But I'm not as concerned as the 30%. So I'm going to focus there. I'm going to close this out and go back to, I'm going to go back to school reports and scroll down. Oops, I'm in the wrong. Okay, I'm going to scroll back down to my NWEA report. So we just looked at class placement and individual student. Now let's take a look at the class progress summary report. Again, keeping with the same class, NWEA, and subject, math. And I click on view. So this is my class progress report for NWEA, looking at all of my students. Again, Charlie Brown is my active demo student. 2 sessions, the time spent, time correct out of the total, his percentage. And so if you're looking at this, there's 4 columns here for session details. And then up here is the blue ribbons column. There are 3 columns here. So he did earn 1 blue ribbon.
Sorry about that.
So you have that data report here about his blue ribbons as well. I'm going to go back up to the top. So we just looked at the 3 different reports for NWEA and how to capture that data. Again, look at your class placement to see where all your students were placed. Then if you want to look at an individual student, click on individual and pretty much just follow what the steps are. What's next? Your class name, your student, selecting 1 student instead of all students, and then select the discipline. You can go into your reading as well, and then click view report. So those are the types of reports that you get from NWEA. So now I'm good.
Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. But I do want to mention and I think I forgot earlier on, that's what happens when you've presented a few times, but sometimes we're thinking during NTI, how can we possibly support students in a multi-tiered system? But what I want you to remember is to just remember the ultimate goal of an MTS system, and that is to support and be proactive and support all learners and all levels of capacity so that you can accelerate learning. So you as the teacher make those decisions. What can I do to best serve my kids now to accelerate learning of those students that you are able to reach right now? So just think of MTSS in that mindset. Let's go on and look at maybe how can we use some of those reports. So Denise mentioned the class summary report, where you could identify students maybe with similar knowledge gaps, and using some of the lessons and some of the presentation that we learned from Sam or Ashley, you could make group assignments or launch different activities like videos, writing assignments. You could use the teacher toolkit. You can look at the standards continuum on there, but you could create assignments for your groups. And if you're able to, maybe you can have a digital focus group. Today, I'm going to look a little bit more, what can I do with the individual student report to accelerate learning? Well, like Denise also showed, you could look at the missed questions and analyze for misconceptions. You could launch an assignment. You might be able to meet with them one-on-one in some capacity, but then you can review or reteach those misconceptions. Another thing you can do, which would be similar to using the learning continuum and the responsive lesson planning using the MAP data, is looking at the learning path and then identify identify skills that support the learning of an upcoming standard. And that would be a form of acceleration. So let's take a look at that, what the steps would be. Well, first of all, you would identify an upcoming essential high leverage standard that you're going to teach, let's say maybe next week or in 2 weeks. And then you would go to the student's learning path and identify the logical prerequisites for that standard at grade level. Then you would direct the student to complete those lessons before instruction on the grade level standard. So on the learning path, it does not have to go in order. You can have the students skip around and guide them based on what the teaching that's going to be in the next few weeks. You can have them create, or you can have them finish the lessons, complete the lessons that support the instruction for that upcoming standard. So let's take a look at a student's actual learning path. And this is a learning path of a fourth grader. Now you can see in operations and algebraic thinking, they are at a grade level 3. And numbers and operations, they were placed at a grade level 2. Well, let's say next week or in 2 weeks, I want to teach numbers and operations in base 10, 4.1. So I would go to my student's learning path and I would look in numbers and operations in base 10. And I see several lessons. Or if I want to see what the prerequisites are for 4.1, I could use this tool here, the coherence map, which is located in Achieve the Core. I would suggest, if you have not used this resource, that you might want to spend some time with it. We're going to go to it right now, and I'll show you how I picked out those lessons. So this is Achieve the Core. It's a coherence map for math. And you can identify gaps in students' knowledge by tracing the standard and looking at the prerequisites. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm teaching grade 4, that's my grade level. And I'm going to be teaching numbers and operations in base 10. Now there's the standard that I would like to teach next week. But before I teach that standard, I need to build up some foundational skills in some of my students. So I need to see what the prerequisites were for that. So I'll skip through these because it just kind of explains how it's organized. And I see for 4.1a, the prerequisite is grade level 2, 1a. So I then can go back to my student's learning path and identify that, and I've identified, these two standards, these two lessons, it's going to keep popping up on me, that support 4.1. And the reason I know that is when this report is live, I clicked on the blue where it says standard and it's in blue, and that'll show me exactly the standard for those two lessons. And those two lessons happen to be 2.1. So let me back this up. So what I would do, I identified the standard of 4.1 that I want to teach next week. I then go to my students' learning path and to the coherence map and found out that 2.1 are prerequisites for 4.1. I would then have my student finish those assignments before I teach 4.1. And this would help them be more successful when I teach 4.1. It would increase their engagement and participation because they would probably feel more confident and ready to participate. I would also then, that during that week, check on their progress with those lessons and how well they're doing. I would view their sessions and see what questions they might have missed so that I can clear up those misconceptions before I go on again to teach 4.1. So that would be one way to accelerate students' learning using the learning path. Now on these resources, I have linked the math coherence map. For the progressions for reading, you would go to the standards and the document with the Kentucky standards in them, and you would see the progressions laid out there. So if you look at the standards in fourth grade, they also lay out the previous standard in third grade, and then one if you need enrichment for the fifth grade. So you could go to that document to see the prerequisite standards before the teaching of the following week. You can also see these resources for Study Island. There's many resources out there. You can even Google it, and there's a lot of videos and other resources, but you can also access these resources, again, through that handy NTI Teacher Toolkit site. Through the Study Island link, you can see those additional resources. Now, and if you want to, don't hesitate. You can reach out to myself or Ashley Byerly or Samantha Bennett, all in the academic MTSS team, and we will support you any way we can during this NTI time. And we can think outside the box too. It doesn't just have to be tiered supports. So we are willing to help any way we can to make this time a little bit run more smoothly for you. So please reach out if you need to. I am going to stop my presentation here. So let me log out of this. And let's see.
You did great. That was a lot of good information. Thank you for sharing that. Sorry I didn't interject more. I was trying to, when we started, your screen was compact and it was something I was doing. So I was figuring out a way to stretch out the screen. So I think we're all good now. We were able to see the whole presentation.
Did I stop sharing? Am I good now? You see me?
Yep, we see you. Yes.
Okay. I would like to say, though, just like any good teacher, I was noticing that I was scheduled to do this presentation 5 different days this week, but realizing that maybe teachers weren't necessarily engaged with this, just like you're in a classroom, right? So if your students aren't engaged, you want to change things up. So since this is, I've done this one 3 times and there'll be a recording of it, I'm going to change tomorrow and Friday's session. So I believe it's already on the schedule. I am going to be talking about an action research idea I had about writing talks and how we might use that for critical discourse and writing to accelerate learning, which is the whole point of MTSS, right? To accelerate learning and meet students where they are. So if you have an interest in that, please join me tomorrow or Friday, and I'll be sharing some ideas I have and the other digital tools that I've used, like Jamboard and Canva, and I'm just becoming a pro at it, like so many of us are all of a sudden. So I look forward to that. Was there happen to be any questions in the? I think I talked really fast during this one.
No, you did. You did great, and you're fine. We had Sade and Kathleen were in the chat, and there were people saying hi, but not too many questions. Like you said, that's great. I love you are obviously a great educator because you realize, like, okay, I think we've covered this. So where do we need to go next with the information? And I agree with you. This obviously been horrible, but I think the best thing that's come out of it is that educators. My wife's a classroom teacher, and she's with students all day, every day. So she doesn't have that extra time to like, oh, I'm going to learn Google Classroom, or I'm going to become a pro at making a meet. Like, who has time to get that? Well, now we have time to learn these tech tools, and I'm actually excited about when we get back to the physical classroom. All these teachers are going to have this new skill set they can use with their students.
And I think that has great potential, because in a regular classroom, I know there are challenges, can be different challenges all day. But this will be another tool that they can use and maybe do some blended learning.
Yes.
I think that there's so much potential with the digital tools in the classroom. And you're right. I've always wanted to learn more about the tools that are out there. But you're right. It's like where's the time in the day? So this really has given me an opportunity and forced me to learn those tools, which has really been a benefit and will continue to be. So it's one blessing of this whole situation.
Yes. Yes.
Becoming more digital savvy.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate. When is your next session? What day and time?
It's tomorrow at the same time, same place.
Same time, same place, right here on the JCPS Digital Learning Channel. Yes, please come on back. All right, we'll see you then. Thank you.
All right.
And we have a couple minutes before our next session. So I'm going to take you to the JCPS NTI support page. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this. What I love about it is not only is there a teacher toolkit, a student toolkit, but a parent guardian toolkit. So you don't have to only use this if you're a teacher. If you have parents that are asking you questions, you can direct them to the jcps.me/NTI site, and they can get help as well. So looking at our training schedule, that was Study Island. And again, next up, it looks like we have Building Resilience, and they have their resources are right here. So if you hover over this, you can copy that Google Doc and be able to get the resources that they are going to share. And then after that, we're going to have NTI Exemplars from the Field, all about bullying prevention and student safety and supports. What's your question? Using action research to hone your practices, and PDL, supporting new teachers. So we have a full day of programming coming up. Let me switch over and see if I can get. Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
All right, great. So we have Jennifer and Lisa here. It looks like Lisa is ready to present. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. All right. Lisa, you are up. And thank you, ladies. Please introduce yourselves and let us know what we're going to be learning today.
All right. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I am Lisa McGarry, and I am a resource teacher with social emotional learning and trauma-informed care. And with me is Jen Driscoll. Jen, you want to say hi?
Hey guys, I'm Jen Driscoll. I'm a resource teacher. We're so excited to hang out with you all this afternoon.
We're happy to have you.
I am going to get started with our presentation, and we're going to be talking about building resilience. The first thing that we want to do is to provide our contact information. So if anybody is watching or listening and would like some resources, or you have some questions, you have some support that you are in need of, please feel free to email any of the four of us, and we'll get that to you. As we go through the presentation as well, while Jen and I are talking to you, our boss, Dr. Mesa March John, and our colleague, Jay or Christina Johnson, will both be in the chat responding to any concerns or questions, keeping the conversation going. So be looking for them as well. Now, when we get started with this, we always set some goals so that we know what we're going to be talking about. And the three goals that Jen and I are going to take you through are to give you a definition of resilience, look at some protective factors in building that resilience, and then gaining some strategies and some activities that will also support resilience. Now, our focus in most of the trainings is the ways in which educators can support students, but it's important as we go through this to be mindful that while some of this is geared specifically towards students, this is something that's also beneficial for adults and for ourselves as we are going through some of these tough times or stressful situations. With all of our trainings, we always include a self-care alert. We are the trauma department, and sometimes when we talk about trauma, it brings up uncomfortable feelings or reminds us of our own hard situations that we've experienced. So if it does that for you, feel free to take a break, drop some questions or some comments in the chat, phone or text a friend, or do something relaxing. If you've watched any of our other trainings, you will have seen some of the strategies that we've offered to do that, some breathing exercises, whether it be just taking a break or some time for yourself, sitting in silence, listening to music, whatever it might be that allows you to take care of yourself, please, please, please do that. So if you would, in the chat box, thinking about what we are focusing our training on today with resilience, drop us some words that you believe why it's more important now than ever to build resilience. Could be for our students, could be for ourselves as we are all dealing with these different times and working from home and having all of those stressors sort of change. Why would it be more important now than ever to build resilience? Okay, so in thinking with that, let's talk about what resilience is. When we are talking about overcoming adversity and being able to take that and spin it into a positive or create a positive adaptation, look on the bright side of things, even in heavy situations. This is resilience. When you are faced with a situation like I just watched a neighbor of mine be taken away in an ambulance. Well, no one could go with him in that ambulance. That's a incident that would create some adversity or some stress. But being able to find some positive or to push through that and know, okay, I'm going to get through this. That other person's going to get through this, and we're going to be able to continue on in our lives in some normal manner. That is an example of some resilience. Resilience specifically, or in shorter terms, is the ability to overcome adversity and then to thrive. To understand that life sometimes is hard, but we are tough. I have seen lots of quotes as I've been on social media talking about you never know how strong you are until strong is the only thing that you can be. So understanding that yes, hard times come, but they will also go. That we are made of tougher stuff. This is something that we have to be intentional with. It is something that we ourselves can nurture in ourselves and for others. If you think about students that you've had to work with, that there are many situations that are outside of our control, many conditions in their lives that we can't control. We have to focus on those ways in which we can support them and make them feel like even though tough times come, yes, you can face them. Yes, you can get over them. Yes, you can continue to push through. And I don't want it to always or to seem like it has to be a major incident. Sometimes it is a stumbling block, like understanding a concept in math or being able to read a word. When students get to those places where they feel like they can't get past that, we have to find ways to help them get over those stumbling blocks. And again, it doesn't have to be how do you get past the fact that you live in foster care and it's not a good situation and you're getting ready to age out of that system. It doesn't have to be large issues like that. Resilience can be overcoming the fact that you can't understand what the X means in an X+2 equation. So thinking about those ways in which we as educators work help students overcome that adversity, no matter how large or small. Another way we want to look at resilience is to understand that it is not our job to remove all tough situations. It is not our job to try and control all of the things about our students' lives. It's not our job to try and control all the things about our lives. We can't control what's going on in our world right now. Some of us will be excited on May 11th to get to go out in public and just have to wear a mask. Others of us will wait in our homes to see what's going to happen and how things transpire before we go out, thinking masks are not going to be enough. I don't want to be in that second wave if it's coming. So it's not our job to remove those obstacles or those moments of adversity, but to build those skills, to be intentional and help overcome those. So it's like building a muscle. It's like increasing the capacity to overcome, to find those bright spots, to change thoughts and actions so that they are growth mindset versus being defeatist. You see on this slide that there is a quote that I thought encompassed all of this perfectly. It says, "My barn having burned down, I can now see the moon." So it's a horrible situation, but finding something good from it that, you know what, I wasn't focusing on something else before. If you were here with Shay and I last week or the week before, we talked about being grateful and maybe keeping a grateful journal or being mindful of the things that we do have. So yes, in week 475 that we're in with this quarantine, I feel like I am ready to be back to being able to go out in public and not afraid that I'm going to be deathly ill or those that I love will contract this virus. However, taking the time to look at and find those moments that, you know, I'm glad today with this wind and this rain that I have a roof that doesn't leak. So finding those ways to become positive, that yesterday was my birthday and I felt very loved because people reached out to me, that we are making connections with people, even though there are hard times that we are facing. So just changing our focus, being intentional so that we are looking for those positive things or those things that bring us joy, those things that make us laugh, things that we might have missed out on when we were in our old normal, moving from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, that now we have to become creative. We have time, like the presentation before said, to hone some skills, to learn some new things, to become equipped in other ways that we might not have been. So again, being intentional and building those skills. When you do that for yourself, I have found it's easier to transpire that with others who are facing hard times. So you have examples of, okay, I had to deal with this. Well, a student is dealing with something. Okay, well, maybe how could I teach them to do that? And with that, I've already kind of touched on this, but I want to get to the protective factors. We have to understand that stress is something that's necessary in life. If we didn't feel stress crossing a street with a car rushing at us, we would not jump out of the way. Our bodies know, our brains kick in, it's that fight, flight, or freeze, and make us move to keep us safe. So stress is something that is necessary in life. We have to teach our children that. We have to nurture that. We have to give them skills to help them learn that even though sometimes it feels like we are standing in the middle of the street and those cars are rushing at us, that we can move, that we cannot have to get hit by that car. It does not have to take us down. So again, understanding we don't have to take those hardships out of the way, but we do have to help our students thrive in those adverse situations to be able to overcome them. The other thing that I want to talk about is protective factors, and these are the ways in which we are able to nurture those skills. When students or other individuals have them, what do we add to them to make them grow? So they are sometimes characteristics, sometimes they are events, sometimes they are conditions that increase that chance of healthy development and positive life outcomes. Sometimes it's just a positive attitude. Sometimes it is a skill to know, you know what, I'm going to get past this and I'm going to do this by implementing some self-care. Hey, my teacher did a lesson with me on mindfulness. So this is really stressful for me. She taught me how to breathe while counting. That's what I'm going to do. So I don't have to engage in conflict here, or I can walk away from a situation that's not safe for me. Building up that self-esteem and that self-assuredness Those are things that allow protective factors to grow and therefore students to be more resilient. Here are some examples specifically. I like the first one a whole lot where it talks about showing sensitivity. This is something in understanding that people have their own needs and ways that they need those needs met. And just because it's not the same way as you doesn't mean that we can't be responsive and we can't be sensitive to that. So if you were to take our department, the four of us are similar in some ways, but different in others. Showing sensitivity to me looks different than it does for showing sensitivity to Jen. Having some responsive caregiving, again, looks different. But as we build our relationships, we understand that that's what's necessary. And we as a team are able to do that and build those protective factors for each other. Meeting those basic needs. This is something that JCPS is doing so well in this time of stress with all of the food sites, offering those to any child under the age of 18, not needing proof of anything else, but making sure that students and families are being fed, offering some emotional support, reaching out, whether it be providing other resources. If you find yourself in a situation where students might need to talk with some of the mental health counselors or otherwise, offering that. Sometimes it's just a listening ear, but people having that emotional support is a protective factor and allows resilience to grow. Feeling like, you know what, this is a really hard time for me, but I've got somebody in my corner that I know if I stumble is going to be there to help lift me back up. And even if it is just emotionally, I can keep on going. Being aware that caregivers are, especially now, in need of support, doing what we can to make it easier on them. I think about those food sites or giving out those Chromebooks, making the situations as best as we can with the resources that are available to us to allow caregivers tools that we know that we have, things that are making systems more simple for them to navigate, because this is tough for everybody. And then also promoting new ways of social connectedness, whether it be meet sessions, office hours, just to let students come in and maybe speak with each other, having those moments to talk with teachers aside from just about assignments, playing games, creating activities that are more geared to just being connected because we are so far physically. Okay.
Do you think people?
Jen,
Do you think when we go back, people are going to value that connectivity more?
I sure hope so.
Yes.
I would hope to, or like to think that yes, because we are missing it so much now, that it would be a focus that people would build those relationships and think about, there is something that could come in and literally in a day's time yank us away from each other. So I would like to hope so. Yes.
Yeah, I hope. I'm hoping there's lots of good things to come from this horrible thing. I hope.
Me too.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we're starting to realize that some of the things that we have taken for granted for so long are things that we really need to value, and connection being one of those. All right, so let's talk about strategies that really support resilience. And so when we talk about these strategies that really support and foster resilience for our students, I want you to also think about how these strategies can support building resilience within your own life. I want you to think about how you can utilize these strategies to not just support building resilience for your students, but also for yourself. So the first one we're going to talk about is actually, it's a chart that looks at all of these different areas that support building resilience. So when you look at this chart, I want you to think about ones that are really easy to build on a normal basis and some that are really tough to build. So if you guys would chime in with me, which ones do you think right now might be easier or tougher than they would normally be? Lisa, do you have any opinions?
Yeah, I think the willingness to overcome difficulties rather than avoid problems sometimes is harder, especially if you're home with the same people every minute of every day and there is no break.
Yeah.
sometimes I just want to avoid the problems. I don't want to work through them.
Because the same problems keep coming up over and over again.
Yes, and you never get to be away from people.
Yeah.
I feel I have the ability to recognize my emotions and those of others easier because you might have emotions that pop up, but when they pop up during the hustle bustle of a normal day, I don't have time to think about them. I got to get to my next place and next meeting. But yeah, I feel like, okay, why am I feeling this way? And you actually can reflect on that a little bit.
Oh, I love that. Because see, for me, it's been a little bit different because I've noticed that the ability to recognize my emotions has been a little bit tougher because my emotions are all over the place. Some days I feel phenomenal. I'm like, I'm going to get so much work done. I'm going to knock it out of the park. And then other days I wake up and I'm like, I don't feel like doing a daggone thing. I'm going to sit on my couch and watch 2 hours of some trash TV on TLC. I don't know. So I think it's really interesting how it can be different in each and every one of us, which is why this is such a good thing for us to be aware of. So let's talk about some strategies that you can use to support building resilience within your own life, but also your students' lives. The first one I want to talk about is connection. And it's really important that we talk about connection because during this time, it's really easy for us to pull away and not have connection. So when we think about connection, we want to think about how important it is to build connection right now. Prioritize those relationships within your life, but also encourage your students to do the same thing. Really encourage them to have a social support network. Really seek out those pro-social peers, those people that are going to be positive influences on their lives, and look for ways that you can support and connect with caregivers. This is so incredibly important. I have a 7th grade daughter, and she had choreographed a piece that she had to do for her class. And I received an email from her teacher the other day just telling me that she thought it was a piece that was really well done and how proud she was of her. And that made me feel good. And I have connection with a ton of educators, but just seeing that her teachers were taking the time out to connect with me was an amazing feeling. And so never take that for granted, because not only do we need to be connecting with our kiddos and encouraging them to do the same, but the caregivers need that connection as well, because this is a collective traumatic experience for every single one of us. None of us know how to deal with this, so make sure that you're looking for that connection. The next piece we're going to talk about is wellness. And wellness is the idea of encouraging yourself and your students to take care of your body and your mind. This isn't just making sure that you get out and take a walk or you do some exercise and activity, but it's also making sure that you're taking care of what's going on the inside as well. Avoiding those negative outlets, encouraging your students to avoid those negative outlets, reminding them to turn off the TV when it gets to become a negative source, or to steer away from people that are going to be negative. Talk to them about being able to accept change, because that's huge right now, especially for our seniors or our 8th graders or our 5th graders. They don't have us there to walk them through this process like they normally would. And so have conversations with them about what this stage is going to look like. Allow them to talk about it and to emote. Allow them to talk about things like self-efficacy and the ability to know that they have what it takes to handle whatever life's going to throw their way. Encourage them to share some of their new experiences in wellness and how they're learning to care for themselves, because this is a beautiful time to teach them to try new things, whether it's learning to cook or learning to clean up around the house or to do something to care for who they are as individuals. And that can be done at every stage of the game, whether you're working with kindergartners or middle school students or high school students. This self-efficacy piece and learning how to accept these changes and caring for themselves is a beautiful time for us to talk about wellness, and it's a beautiful piece of that resilience part. So the next strategy we're going to talk about is being open and aware. So I really like this because this really gets us thinking about how this has affected all. And so one of the things that we want to think about is that we have to accept challenging thoughts for what they are, but also provide a safe space for them. Here's the deal. All thoughts and feelings are okay. It's okay to feel what you feel, because some days we're going to wake up and be really mad at the things that are going on around us. We're going to be pissed off that we weren't able to have our end of the year celebrations, that we aren't able to hug our students goodbye, that we are doing trainings virtually. I really miss being able to train live people like I do. But there are going to be days where we wake up and we're okay with it because we know that we're safe and we know that we're doing the things that we're supposed to be doing. These are all a part of the human process. The key to it is being open and aware with where you're at and allowing your students to have that conversation too. Ask them, how are you feeling today? Where are you at? And know that some days it's going to be really great and some days it's not. Have these conversations with the people in your household and allow them to practice some mindfulness techniques to process and accept the moment for what it is. Because when we do that, it allows us to understand and cope with those emotions and then become more resilient as the process ebbs and flows. So the next strategy that we're going to talk about really goes along with that. But this one is a beautiful piece that if we teach our students now, will really train them as they become adults. And this one is to be compassionate. But the cool thing about this one is that we're not just teaching them to be compassionate with those around them, we're teaching them to be compassionate with themselves. We really want to encourage them to show compassion to themselves throughout this time. Allow them to be mindful of how they're feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally, but also teach them not to judge themselves too harshly. There are going to be days where they mess up, and that's okay. That's a part of the process. You don't learn unless you fail. And I think that's something that sometimes we forget as we go throughout this journey. So help our students understand what it means to give grace. Understand yourself what it means to give grace. Understand what it means to not judge yourself too harshly. I really struggle with this. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I am a grade A control freak, and I like things to go a certain way. I really like to have all of my ducks in a row. And so this has been a process for me as an adult. Learning how not to judge myself too harshly, learning how not to freak out when things don't go my way. Think about how much easier this would have been for me as an adult if I would have learned this or had these conversations when I was in 5th grade or 6th grade or middle school or high school. So this is a beautiful part of the resilience building component, because when I understand that falling down is a part of getting up and learning how to run, I become a better human being. So really think about this as you start teaching yourself and your kiddos what it means to be resilient.
Just think about all those teachers out there who are masters of the physical classroom, and now they're having to create a me classroom and use Google Classroom, and they're learning and making mistakes. And I know it's been challenging and frustrating for some of them. It's great that they're learning new skills, but I know that's been tough for some people.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I think as educators we struggle so much, is because a lot of us tend to be perfectionists. And so we want things to go so beautifully. And I think that's part of why NTI has been so hard. So, but yeah, you're exactly right. So we're going to give you a few activities so that you can put this resilience piece into practice. We don't want you to just be able to talk to your students about it. We also wanted you to have some things that you could do with them, because resilience is something that you can do each and every day. So here are a few things. You can work with your students to create a vision board, or there's a grit interview that you can have your students do, whether it's with someone that they know in their lives who's been resilient, or talk to them about stories of resilient people, whether it's throughout history or someone in their school building. There's also the hard thing rule, which is really cool. And it's where everybody has to find something that they know is difficult and then pursue it. They must finish whatever they start, and no one can pick the hard thing for anyone else. They have to do it for themselves. So this just really gets students to think about trying something outside of their wheelhouse so that they know everybody has to do something difficult. On the next slide, there are a few examples. And if you go to our our Google Slides, you will see in the comment section that there are all of these things linked. And if you go to mybigjournal.com, I believe it is, you can find a ton of different activities for kids from kindergarten through 12th grade that really get them thinking about what resilience looks like and how they can put these things into practice. One of my favorites is it in or out of my control? And that is something that I know kids from elementary school through 12th grade struggle with. And this is a journal writing prompt that you could assign to your students in NTI that gets them thinking about, is this something that's within my control or is it out of my control? So here are a few more strategies that we'll talk about as we wrap up today. I'm only going to touch on a few of them because I know that you can read through them on your own, but let your students know that it's okay to ask for help. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. Also, really teach them how to reframe their thinking. That's a huge part of the process. On the last slide that looks at these strategies, there are a few others that we'll talk about. Always teach them to face their fears, but through support, because the relationship is the key to everything. Don't always rush to your students' rescue. There's a beautiful part of that process where they can really struggle through it, and that's beautiful. Really try to work on building their problem-solving toolbox through anything that you get them to do. And remember, reactions are going to be varied in everything that we do right now. So empathy and understanding are going to go a really long way in the students that you work with, in the people that you interact with, in everything that you do. So really work on that empathy building process. Try to build it with yourself also. So as we wrap up today, we're going to leave you guys with a quote that's going to just allow you to think about how you build resilience with your students and yourself. Learning isn't a way of reaching one's potential, but rather a way of developing it. So remember that as you go along this journey. Give yourself some grace and try to have a little bit of fun as you do it. Here's our contact information. Please reach out to us should you guys need anything at all. We are more than happy to help. If you want some of the resources we talked about, if you have questions, if you need any kind of support, please let us know.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you, Jennifer. That was great. Hopefully helpful during this NTI time, and then hopefully it's something that will carry over as we return to whatever is our new normal is going to look like. So thank you. Let's see who we have. Thanks. Let's see who we have coming up next. We have Joe McKim, Maddie Shepard, Suzanne Kramer, and it looks like some others are going to be here. And here's their resource on the JCPS digital learning, or on the jcps.me/NTI site. You can get that. And they're going to talk to us about NTI exemplars from the field. How are you doing, ladies?
Hi, I'm doing well today. I can't speak for Maddie and everyone else.
I'm glad you're doing well. We'll hope they are too. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if they're doing well? All right. Good. Yes. Just like with our students. All right. It's 1:29. If you have, like me, in the background or another tab open, if you could maybe mute that. And when you're presenting your slides, make sure to turn on closed captioning for us. And who is going to start today?
Hi, I'll go ahead and get us started. I'm Joe McKim. I'm with the Deeper Learning team, and I have Maddie Shepard with me today from the Deeper Learning team, and Suzanne Kramer from our middle school ELA content lead. And then we have several teachers with us today. So what we're trying to do is recognize and highlight some of the great practices that have come out of NTI. So we've asked some teachers to share with us some of the practices they put in place, how those practices are impacting students, and how this might influence or impact their instructional planning for when we get back to classrooms. And we have examples across elementary, middle, and high school. And we'll get started with Sarah Weedman from Atkinson Elementary. And I believe Maddie Shepard's going to share her screen so everyone can see what she's talking about.
All right, great. I love this because I know we have lots of professionals have been on the digital learning channel sharing what they know, but I love hearing what's going on with our teachers out there in the field. So I will click on Maddie's screen. And if someone has me a tab open with the show on another device, if you can mute that, please. So we don't have the echo.
All right, are we ready?
We're ready.
All right.
Sounds good. Great.
Like Joe said, I'm Sarah Weedman. I teach second grade at Atkinson Elementary. This is my third year there, and also want to give a shout out to my coworkers and my team, because we would not have as much success without everyone being a part of this. So first of all, second grade, you have to think about your audience, who you're going to be working with. I work with 7 and 8-year-olds who are not as independent with technology as maybe middle schoolers and high schoolers. They had experience in Google Classroom previously in my room, but getting them independently, their long emails, getting them typed that in, we knew that was going to kind of be a point of frustration for them. Also, who are they living with? Who's going to be helping them? They live with grandparents, they live with great-grandparents, and even family members who might not have had as much exposure to technology as well. So we streamlined our second grade work all into one place. I haven't shared this other times, but keeping everything in one place for a 7-year-old was really important too, because that, if they only have to go to one place and click and it takes them directly where they're supposed to go, that's very helpful with not giving them that extra distraction of going to watch music videos on YouTube or wherever they might actually want to go rather than doing their schoolwork. So in their slide, which I'll show you in a minute, this is their first page that they get. This is something all of our staff is using. It's similar to a choice board. So if you have a kid who loves reading, decides, I want to do all my reading the first day, they have that option where they could go in a horizontal direction if they want to do all their reading or all their science. Now, in the vertical direction is set up to be structured like their school day. So we wanted to think about how we can.
You're freezing up a little bit, but that's okay. Keep going. It should be fine.
Their slides. When it apologize. We go through their slides. You'll see all the things that say click here. We'll take them to a direct slide where they type in their answers and they do their work. So those would be set up in their normal school day setting. Need that structure and crave that structure as well. We've got their reminders. I keep all their passwords on here. You'll see down next is that learning at home, which hyperlinks to all of these things. So it starts on Monday. And they have different activities for each day. So we'll just kind of look through that for a second. I'm a visual learner, so I wanted you to kind of see how it's set up. And this will also stay on the document, so you're welcome to use this as a resource. All right, going back to the original slide. Every single day in my classroom, I have a question of the day. When they come in, they hang up their backpack, I have a question on the board. And it's really just a way that I get to know my students better or kind of find out things that might be going on at home that I wouldn't know had I just be like, okay, good morning, let's get to work. So that was important for me to make that a part of NTI. So there's little emojis on the side, and the students can drag and drop their emoji that, and they're 7, so they think that's cool, that they feel like they're texting, and they can type to me why they feel that way. So I've had students tell me, that they're sad or that they don't want to do their work right now. They'd rather be outside, or they'll tell me really exciting things like, hey, I got a new scooter today, and it's been a great way for me to connect. And those students who have experienced frustration, I can kind of type back a message like, hey, you're doing a great job. I had a student last night, and he was like, I like this page. It's the only page I know I've gotten right. And I was able to write back to him like, you've done great. Like, your math looks amazing. So hopefully it was an encouragement to him. It's just kind of one of those things where they can put out their frustration. On the next slide, I put in some images of our slides, and for their reading, we just have them answer a simple question so we know that they've read it. All of their writing, we put on their sentence stems because that might be a support that most of them have in the classroom. So I know one of our things this week was like, you need to have 3 sections in the beginning, in the middle, in the end, and we'll write on there, we need to see more than one sentence so that our expectations are clear. And with this being in Google Slides, I've been able to go in and highlight like, hey, you need to go back and fix this, or can you add punctuation? Lastly, in the corner, you'll see we've added in visual cues, just because they are they are young, and sometimes things might not work. This was a link I was having trouble with. It worked for some people, didn't work for others. So I went in using the snipping tool and showed them, if you can't get this to work, this is exactly what you need to do to get to this website. And my students, because they have enough visuals, it's all in one place, and they're kind of in the swing of things now, they're independently logging in and doing this on their own. Out of my 15 kids, 14 are doing this on Google Classroom, and I've had high participation rates, and they're really enjoying doing this work, and I could not be more proud of them.
That's great.
Yes, that's all I've got. Joe?
Sarah, first of all, I had a couple comments, if you don't mind. One, you have one of the best backdrops I've seen of any presenter. That's awesome. What sort of positive feedback have you gotten from your students and parents about this new way they're doing school with you?
Yeah, so a lot of my students who I was very worried about, that are a little bit more squirmy or have more behavioral episodes in the classroom, have amazed me, because they're the ones that are having the most success with this. It's totally blown my mind, and it's really changed my mindset of maybe this is something I need to implement more in the classroom when I get back, because in my head, if I let a kid choose who maybe struggles with behavior, it's just innate, I think, in our bodies, that if you're letting them go and choose what they want to do and they're having fun or whatever, that's like a reward for that behavior. But I'm really seeing that when they get to choose, and then maybe they need to take a few minutes of a break, that's something that they actually need, and that helps them be successful more so than just rewarding, a behavioral episode. So I've been really impressed by that, and just they've become more motivated internally with being able to choose their own structure. So that choice board, I really like the idea of taking that back into the classroom and maybe letting them choose their own science, what order they want to do their science or their writing in the week. Because at the end of the day, as long as it's getting done and they're doing their best and having fun with it, I don't care what day it gets done. I just want them, learning. So it's been really great to see that. And the parents have had positive comments on how they really appreciate that we put everything into one document, and maybe their other students from different schools or different grade levels haven't had that experience. So just everything being in one place, they've said it's been super.
I think that is great that you did that. That has been, we hear some of the concerns, and that is one. It's like there's too many different places to go, and those teachers and teams that have found ways to keep it in one place, very beneficial. So, and I agree on the choice, giving students choice. Hopefully, that's a great thing that every teacher is going to take away from this. And when we return, it'll be helpful. Thank you.
Yes. Move along, because we do have 4 other people to speak for our little 30 minutes, and we are going to talk about all of these speakers, kind of highlight a lot of those components that you're talking about around student voice and choice and how they're communicating with parents. So Danielle Krogan, who is a middle school math teacher at the Marion C. Moore School, has been sharing with us, but she's not able to get on today. So I believe Maddie Shepard is going to step in and talk about Danielle's work.
Yep, Danielle's had some technical difficulties today, but no worries, we will press on. So Danielle teaches middle school math, and her team has a very... Maddie, I was able to get on. Yay! I just got it to work from Derek's phone, so sorry for my delay.
Glad you're here.
No, we're glad you're here. Okay. Yeah, it was technical difficulties, but I don't know where you started, but I'll just pick up with my part. So our main focus at Moore in 7th grade math, and my team in general, was helping teachers and students all stay organized, while also keeping students engaged with voice and choice throughout our NTI time. So the first thing that we talked about is having a team set of teachers, was keeping everybody on the same page, and making sure we were participating in one class. So I created this Google Sheets with check boxes that has a list of all of our student names, so that way we can check in with students that are completing work or not completing work. For example, student number 1, you can see didn't check in during week 1 or week 2 of NTI. So we reached out specifically to them over and over until they were able to at least eventually during week 3 start getting at least one assignment turned in. We also indicated on student 11, those students that were receiving paper packets, to make sure that one of us could check in with them on a regular weekly basis to see if they needed help with anything from the JCPS choice boards. And really this helped us keep up with our students to make sure they were being marked present. Even if they weren't specifically completing our work, they were still at least checking in and trying to do something. And then our next part was to make sure that parents were staying on the same page. So I created this Google Slides that has all 4 of our subject and content areas on one slide that parents can see. And they're all hyperlinked, and it was really helpful for parents to see every subject in one screen, so that way they didn't have to check back and forth through our Google Classrooms to try to find individual assignments. And then if they wanted more specifics, those are all hyperlinked from each subject area too. And then finally, on organization, we posted on our Google Classroom a student checklist to keep up with all of their materials that they needed to get turned in. And we broke it down by subject area, so they can just put a check mark in there whenever they completed something. And this wasn't anything that we graded, just simply for students to stay organized. And for our math department, to keep students engaged, we decided to use our own variation of the student choice board, and giving students a lot of options in how they wanted to learn and move on with our materials. So option 1, students had the Khan Academy option, where they could watch instructional videos and do the practice there. Khan Academy is a great resource. And then also, as our 7th grade math PLC, we created instructional videos from our team, and students were able to use the different methods that we talked about in class. For option 2, students could watch those teacher videos and then complete some IXL topic areas connected. And then option number 3, students could watch those same video from the teachers, and then they had the option of doing kind of like a story or game mode type review to get them through as well. With the story mode reviews, I also created some interactive websites for students. So during weeks 1 and 2, students reviewed all of the IM units 1 through 6 that we covered prior to going on our coronacation, as I call it, at school. But they were, I don't know if we have time.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to mute myself because I can hear my dogs barking. My bad.
Technical difficulties today. These are interactive websites, and students were given worksheets to follow along. And I know Maddie really likes the Harry Potter one, so I'm sure she's going to click on that one. So I created these interactive websites, and each tab or page that student visit is a review of each unit that we covered prior to it. So the first one that she clicked on here is Green God's Bank, and something that we cover in 7th grade is changing from positive and negative numbers using a number line. So if you know anything about Harry Potter, you know that the vaults go really far down into the ground, and then they also have a bank above ground level. So using that change in elevation to represent positive and negative numbers were one of the things that I pointed out specifically. And then the second huge thing in 7th grade math is applying percentages to real world context. So I created a shopping list where students have to go shopping at Diagon Alley and buy different materials and things they need for the upcoming school year. And then they have a coupon page where they have to apply percentages for discounts and coupons, and also apply taxes for the different stores. And like I said, applying percentages is something huge in 7th grade that they learn how to do, especially applying to real world context as well. And my fantasy world context too, I guess.
That is amazing. I bet your kids love that. My kids would like to do that right now. Very cool.
Yeah, they really, really enjoyed it, especially the Fortnite one. I can't tell you how many of my 23 students did the Fortnite review, because that's what all middle schoolers love right now.
Yes, they do. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm glad that worked out for you to get on and share your work with us. I love hearing how you are engaging your students with things that interest them and giving them choice. Next, we're going to move to an ELA example from Frederick Olmsted Academy South. I believe Sarah Bryant is on the line.
Yes, thank you. So at OAS, we decided to make the choice boards provided by JCPS our primary focus of NTI. So regardless of whether a student is in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, and regardless of their access to technology, the requirement is the same for all students. They're expected to read for 20 minutes a day and complete 4 choice board activities a week, in addition to their related arts work. We're using this system to simplify communication and to make sure that all students are receiving high-level quality instruction. In addition to this overall requirement, we've created an OAS extension site, which allows students to engage in learning on their own terms. Teachers have created special Google Classrooms to host what are essentially like after-school clubs. Students can freely choose topics that interest them, regardless of what grade level they're in and what teacher is hosting the club. This allows us to build relationships across all grade levels, and it increases student engagement because they're choosing the activity they want, and they're even allowed to tell a teacher that they think we should host a club, just like at normal school. So how does the choice board requirement work? We can go on to the next slide. Each week, grade levels divide the activities on the weekly choice board by core content area. And then PLCs work together to create scaffolding materials, models, and lessons for each activity that they're sponsoring. So for example, on choice board number 2, one of the activities that ELA sponsored in 8th grade was an activity called Poem or Song Lyrics Analysis. So my PLC, since we were sponsoring this activity, we each had a spot for this activity to be turned in our Google Classroom. And then attached to that, we had the rubric, a Think Aloud model, and then scaffolding materials to support them. But yeah, we broke it down step by step. And this is a model that I created. And there's a video attached in the first slide there that shows like how to actually go through and do it. See, so the single point rubric that we used, that was really beneficial. That was Miss Erin Yates' idea. And that helped us to provide stronger, effective feedback because it gave us the ability to hone in on our essential standards and what we were looking for in particular. So even when the activities are focused on music or health, which my PLC and I have no formal training on, we're able to establish clear expectations that still align to our content area standards. So the interdisciplinary choice boards give students the opportunity to see how their skill sets in other classes apply across all content areas. There are many benefits to this system, but overall, I think the 3 best are that it allows teachers to experience that interdisciplinary model, like working with different activities. And we might not have had the opportunity, or like we might have been more hesitant to do that if we weren't given this this experience. So also, we have been able to become experts on just a few activities each week, which I think improves our instruction, but there's still an ample amount of student choice because they have nearly a dozen activities to choose from each week, but the teachers are, really focused on just a few, which allows us to be more effective in our feedback and allows us to produce stronger scaffolding and models. We're also able to be just as engaged in the work that students are doing at home without technology because it's the same work that students are doing digitally. So when we talk on the phone or when they call a friend to work on an assignment together, the expectations are achievable and clearly set across the board. As far as implications for future lesson design, we've touched on several of these points, but I did just want to mention a few. Student self-pacing. The feedback we're getting from students is that being able to work at their own speed and check in when they really need help is really working for them. Now, as a teacher who regularly utilizes the workshop model, I'm trying to figure out what works in the NTI setting that doesn't work in the classroom. And I think the difference is just being surrounded by your peers, which I can completely understand. But I'm not sure yet how we counter that. In the classroom, I think it's probably going to involve having like Google Meet office hours after school where they can kind of catch up if they got off task in the classroom. Standards-based grading is the way to go. Technology 101, we need to be really intentional with making sure that all of our students know how to use the technology and the resources that are available within it. Opportunities for self-expression, build engagement. And finally, the relationships are everything. Even more than just students will work for you when they know you care. We also need to help them build a positive relationship with their learning and help them find their own why.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, for all of that. So we've seen a couple of themes running through the three teachers we've heard from so far. Very interdisciplinary, student-centered, and grounded in engagement with kids. What was going to really resonate with them? And now we're going to shift to high school, which is sometimes seen as a bit more challenging. And we're going to hear from science teacher Caleb Johnson from Central High School.
Hi, thanks for having me on. Yeah, more challenging. It's tough to get people to agree on things, I feel like, in high school a lot of times, because we get so siloed and so kind of set in our ways. Like chemistry has to look this way, biology has to look this way. So the first thing we actually had to figure out at Central was, what are we going to do with NTI? There's this whole idea, so if we go to the next slide, that we have to teach all our standards, that we have to spend hours studying all the minutiae of science, all these little details. And that kind of, we have to let go a little bit so that we can really make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students. And so we settled on just continue learning. It's what we kept hearing. And so what does that look like? Well, we came up with these interdisciplinary choice boards that we have heard so much about. And I got to say, not a lot. People were a little hesitant at first, myself included. But the more I dug into it, the more I found that when I took my standard out of the center of this board and really put in a compelling question, something that was going to make my students scratch their head and think, I found that it became a lot easier to make this. I found that it provided a lot of structure for what my students wanted to do. And we'll talk about this a little later, but once again, the student interest was just unbeatable. So if we go to the next slide, you can take a look at what this compelling question kind of looks like. One of my standard boards that we would have talked about in chemistry would have been material science and how the structure and organization of the molecular level affects the properties of these things, of these compounds. And so we focus on polymers and plastics. I know a lot of people are focusing on metals if you have a metal program in your school. But the idea that I chose to focus on instead was, why is Earth's waste management in crisis? That's a tough question to answer for anybody. And it might even, ignite some future budding scientists in my students. It might ignite something in them, because this is a question that's relevant. It's real world. And so you can see just some features of this. I've got across the top, those are our high quality core instruction kind of big rocks. These are things that we say all students should be able to demonstrate by the time they graduate. So I came up with a compelling question. And then I thought about the product. How can I get my students to be advocates, to be empathic citizens, thoughtful researchers, global leaders, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's where you see those little notifications, those little icons around my choice board as well. I did require one assignment, and I have suggested my students, if you want to get an A+, then you need to do 3 of these just to give breadth. They're designed to be shorter, more manageable, so that they have more options. That was in my mind. We're always just trying to make it digestible for them almost. They've got a lot going on in their lives. Students are sharing laptops, sharing things. And so I wanted to make it as functional as possible. So my next question here is, why is water so special to life on Earth, not some other substance? This would normally be a whole unit on water special properties and intermolecular forces. So I chose to tune into one thing that they'll need for biology next year, the hydrogen bonding, just so that we can just get the fundamentals and then see how it applies to all aspects of their lives. So we can take a look at just maybe one of those student exemplars up there. If we see, this is the work that they're turning in. These are just, average run-of-the-mill students, and I'm just shocked and blown away by what they've turned in. I've got a PowerPoint slide with each task on a different slide. They're drawing things, they're putting them in there. They went on a socially distant walk around their house to find examples of weathering and erosion. And like we said here, feedback is another key. These weren't perfect, but that's their starting points. There's a conversation. I would go back, I would tag things, I would comment, and ask my students to improve their work. So going forward in the future, if we go back to the slide, I am definitely looking forward to using these next year for exactly like this. I'm a scientist, I'm data driven, and I give a weekly reflection survey to try and see where my students are at, how they're coming along, whether they're feeling overwhelmed. I want to try and reach them as best I can. And this was one of the questions on there. I asked whether my choice boards were interesting and educational, and I wouldn't get that response even in a normal classroom. So I'm already thinking next year, how can I use this to further engage my students? As over 75% said yeah. And I did not pay a student to say that quote either, promise. So yeah, I was kind of blown away by the effectiveness of this interdisciplinary approach, and looking forward to using it in the future.
I'd just like to say that all the work you all have shown today is very impressive. And I love that every single one of you has mentioned how you're going to continue forward with this when you return to the physical classroom. That's great.
All right, Suzanne, would you like to wrap us up?
Yes. So this is our final third 3 of 3 presentation around these great exemplars from the field, and we just appreciate all of these teachers being willing to share their wonderful work. And I think the 3 major takeaways that we're thinking about is how in all of these cases, schools and teachers and teams have put students and families at the center of their instructional design, their curriculum design, and just the way they're designing NTIs. So they started experience, and they started with the experience of students. They considered equity, they iterated quickly, and also these teachers have shown great leadership, and they were trusted to lead this work in their schools, and they've definitely delivered for families in the community. So we just appreciate you all so much. Thank you, and we look forward to how this might look in the classroom in the coming year, and all the ways that this work can be imagined and reimagined in other classrooms, virtually and physically in our district.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I'm sure your students really appreciate what you're doing for them, the parents as well. I really enjoyed that session.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's see who we have coming up next. I'm going to jcps.me/NTI and the teacher toolkit. And right here's the virtual training schedule. And let's take a look at Wednesday afternoon. So those were some excellent NTI exemplars from the field. Next up, we have all about bullying prevention. And let me make sure everybody is here. So we have Brittany, Crystal, and Steven. Glad you were all able to get on. All right. Who is going? Yes, welcome. Who is going to be presenting or speaking first?
This is Crystal Carter.
Hi, Crystal.
All right, let me go ahead and get that up.
All right, it's 2:00. I will turn it over to you if you can introduce yourself and let us know what we're going to be learning today. And when you present, you're presenting your screen. Great. If you could also go into present mode and then turn on closed captioning.
All right.
And I'll help you out with that. So you can click that little hide. There you go. And then closed captioning should be right there.
We're ready, I believe. I see it.
Yes, ready to rock. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Crystal Carter, and I am here from the Culture and Climate Department under Dr. Katie D. Ferrari, and we are representing bullying prevention. Today, we are here to share with you bullying can affect everyone, but you can make a difference. And so teachers, we are on you're on the front lines here, working with your students every day. There's so much that is going on with our students. I was listening earlier with our colleagues in social emotional learning about resilience and taking the time, and how students can be traumatized and have different things going on with them, even with this staying at home and doing the NTI distance learning. And so you are one of their lines of defense. And so we want to make sure that we're giving you good information and ways that you can help, not only with the learning piece, but also things that may be taking place on the internet. And so today you're going to get a lot of information about bullying, and we will be referring to some of the other ones that we have, the other trainings that we've done, and the links to those will be on one of these slides. And this slide is also found on that virtual NTI schedule page. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Crystal Carter. I'm the supervisor of bullying prevention. And we also have our resource teachers. They can go ahead.
I'm Steve Giddings.
And I'm Brittany Knipp.
All right, we also have our clerk, Miss Janet Young. She is the person that works on all of our tip line information, whether they come in via the phone or via the JCPS website. And we'll get you that information a little later on in the presentation.
And I believe Janet is on the chat. So if you have any questions, make sure to post them in the chat and we will address them live on the show.
Yes. Thank you so much. So we've done this before. We do it every time because different people may be on here that weren't on here before. So we want to just go back over some quick information with you. Our purpose in bullying prevention is to provide educational resources and supports to our JCPS stakeholders concerning bullying prevention. Our intention is to build capacity of the learner, whether that's students we're working with or adults we're working with. We are trying to increase awareness about bullying prevention. We want to reduce bullying behavior, and we want to aid the people that are involved in bullying situations, whether that's the person that's been harmed, that is the person that is displaying that bullying behavior, or bystanders. And we're going to talk about that later on in our presentation as well. We are a part of the Culture and Climate Department. And so with that, we know one of the three pillars that Dr. Polio is constantly talking about is to improve that positive culture and climate. And that's one of our purposes and intentions as well. We do not deal with disciplinary action. I know a lot of people call and they think that we do, but we give recommendation after we come out to investigate. We come out to conference and talk to people. We come out to observe in classrooms and things of that nature. And once we get all that, we give the information that we find and we send it to the administrator, and the administrator goes from there. And so we just want to let everyone know we are not a disciplinary team, but we give our information over to assistant soups. We give it over to principals, counselors, and people that have requested us to come out, and they make the determinations based upon what we have gathered. We also want to let you know that we are trained in Obeis Bullying Prevention, which is a world-renowned bullying prevention program that hopefully in the 2020-21 year, you'll see more of that rolling out within schools within JCPS. So in previous trainings, we talked about what bullying is and given that definition. And you can, again, find those on slides that will be coming to you. We'll have the links for everything there. But the main things we want to recap is that bullying is repeated, or it has the potential to be repeated. It is deliberate or intentional, purposeful, and it's marked by imbalance of power. And that imbalance can come in a lot of different ways, whether physical, psychological, intellectual, cognitive. There are a lot of different ways that imbalances of power can come. And so those are the three main things that we look for or at when we're trying to substantiate a situation of bullying. Types of bullying. We have physical bullying, verbal bullying, social, emotional, or relational bullying. That has to do with making a person feel left out or isolated. And then there's also the cyberbullying. And we want to give you some information today, because we are in distance learning, about cyberbullying and some things that teachers you may see or hear about. And we want to give you some resources that you can use actually to help build in some of your lessons, or as we continue with this distance learning, giving you websites and places that you can go to find more resources with that.
I think that's great. I was a technology lab teacher before this, and my main mission, I felt like my mission in life was to help kids stay safe on social media once they got on social media, which we know happens around 13 for most of them. and we try to keep it from happening sooner. And the thing is, not everybody has a designated person in their building to teach. Like, this is how you stay safe when you're using social media or technology. So it's great that you're providing these resources.
All right, thank you. We're going to pass it on to Steve. He's going to talk to us about reasons that students may bully.
Hey, everybody. So there's not one specific reason that people bully. We know that there are tons of reasons. So I'm just going to point out a couple here today. One of the main ones that we come up on in the classrooms is students who may perceive differences. People who are often fear the unknown may attack it. That's what this slide says. I think we all understand what that means. Students may not understand something, so they attack that. And some of the things that could be attacked are things like race, color, national origin, a person's religious beliefs, their sex or gender identity. That's a big one right now, especially in middle schools that we're dealing with. Age and disability. So if you look over here to the side on the little note, it says, look out for students with physical differences that are visible. So students that may wear glasses or braces, students who may be obese, students that wear different types of religious garb, maybe hijabs or yarmulkes or something like that. They may have some type of physical disability or abnormality that people perceive as being different, or different styles of clothing, different accents or language difference. So one of the things we talk about in the classrooms is the difference between bullying and harassment. So they look the same on the outside, but when it comes down to it, there is a little bit of a difference. They both do have an imbalance of power. They both hurt or harm others physically or emotionally. Bullying and harassment are both about power and control. But when it really comes to harassment, that's when it starts messing with people's protected classes. And if you look here on the left, it's the race, color, national origin, religious beliefs, gender identity, age, disability. Those are all protected classes. And people or students who experience bullying in this class, they have protections under the federal laws. So we always point that out when we're in the classrooms. So bullying behavior may violate civil or criminal law. When we talk about this in the classroom, students sometimes give us an eye like, really? I can get in trouble for some of this stuff? Because a lot of students don't understand that when it comes to putting your hands on someone, that could be considered assault. And they don't understand that students in our district are charged with assault. So they sometimes are really surprised by that. Then we start talking about gender bullying or bullying based on sexual harassment, assault, dating abuse, domestic violence, intimidating for gain or extortion. And I like to point this one out, especially in elementary schools, when the kids bring their book fair money and they pull the money out and they're playing with it in their desk, and teacher keeps telling them put it away, and they'll put it away, and then one of the other students sees it and they try to get that money. They threaten to tell their friends not to like them, or they'll threaten to beat them up, something like that. And I explain to them that that's extortion, and it just, this light bulb goes off on their head. Then we talk about rumors and lies and how it's a defamation of character. Bullying based on race, national origin, sex, disability. Again, that's civil rights violations, harassment. Bullying disabled people. Cyberbullying, which is harassment by communication or stalking. And then sexting, sending inappropriate pictures. And again, with this one, it depends on the grade that we're in, how far we go with this. But what I always tell every student, K through 12, if you have something on your phone that you would not show to anybody else, your parents, your friends, your grandparents, your teachers, then you probably shouldn't send it because it's probably not appropriate. Once you send it, you cannot take it back. Then we talk about the difference between peer conflict and bullying. A lot of times, especially in elementary and middle school, the line is kind of blurred for some people. So we talk about peer conflict as being a disagreement or an argument. We tell people we realize this happens all the time. It's a natural thing. It happens between adults. It happens between children. But usually with peer conflict, we have a disagreement or an argument. We come to an agreement. Eventually, we make up. We move on. We're still friends. When it comes to bullying, the goal is to hurt, harm, or humiliate. So there is no disagreement or argument there. It's the goal is to hurt you. And then peer conflict, again, we have equal power. So it's usually two friends are probably in the same grade or around the same age, same likes, same dislikes, that sort of thing. Bullying is unequal power. Maybe somebody that's a lot larger than you, or a lot more popular, or maybe a lot smarter, those sort of things. Peer conflict, it generally stops when, and the behaviors change when you realize you hurt someone's feelings. So if I have a friend and we argue and I say something wrong, I hurt their feelings, it usually hurts my feelings. And so I'll make up with that friend. I'll apologize and I'll say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, that sort of thing. Bullies, they don't care. They want to hurt your feelings. If they see you crying, they don't care. That's what they intend to do. So that's a pretty good difference. If you look at the conflict and bullying, you can definitely see it on the screen. But like I said, when you're in the actual classroom and you have 2 or 3 students who aren't getting along, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference there. And then for my last slide, we talked about, this is part of our OVEAS training. And studies have shown through the OVEAS research that only 14 to 17% of students are directly involved with bullies. That's either the person bullying or being bullied. But there's 80+% of people who are involved indirectly. And all these people on this chart are those people. So we have a person up in the left-hand corner who is the person who's doing the bullying. And then we have the person in the middle, and H, who's the person being bullied. And if you look all around, we have the followers, the supporters, the passive supporters, the disengaged onlookers, the possible defenders, and then the defenders. So that's a lot of people who are involved indirectly. You have people on the bus, you have people in the classroom, and the cafeteria, in the hallway, people who are standing by just watching. These are all people who are affected by what they're seeing. And if this continues, it does eventually affect the culture and the climate of the school. So we spend a lot of time on this slide when we're in schools. We have several activities that we do with this slide, just so we can help people understand that they need to be defenders or supporters, not supporters, defenders and possible defenders. Those are the people we look for.
Don't you find that bullying normally, in your experience, might slow down or stop if there's more people that do stand up? If they, like, the bully kind of thrives in a situation in which they have no defenders?
Definitely. And that's what we tell, that's one of our main focuses in these presentations we do. You know, if you see somebody being bullied, stand next to them. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to go tell right that moment. But just standing next to that person and supporting them, even non-verbally, that goes a long way to help stop it. So that's a great point.
Yeah, I still remember when I was in high school and a student was being bullied and I stood by and did nothing, and it haunts me. I wish I would have stood up. So yeah, making that choice will definitely make you feel better.
All right, I'm going to pass it off to Brittany.
Thank you, Steve. All right. So, in speaking of bullying and bystanders and people that stick up for others, it really has changed throughout generations. We put pictures of a pager, a house phone or landline, and then a call phone where you had to put in the quarters, which our students would laugh at if they saw these, but they were very real back in the day. And we talk about how if you were being bullied or having an argument with someone via the pager or your phone at home, your parents probably would know about it because they could pick up that phone at any time and hear what you were saying, or your time on the phone or your pager was controlled a lot more than it is today. And today our students are so much more capable of having social media, computer, internet, their cell phone at their hands at all times. It has created a higher and greater need, one, for a position like we have to kind of intervene and support students within our schools, but also a greater need for the education of cyberbullying. And that's what we're going to talk about moving forward. And in a lot of our presentations, we do talk about that because cyberbullying is at the hands of our students. And now with NTI, especially, they have Chromebooks that some of them didn't have. They're more video games they're on. They might have their cell phone more than when they were at school. Their parents could have a hard time controlling that if they haven't set boundaries for it. So it's really important that we get the message out about the need of cyberbullying and just the education and awareness of it. Within my next slide, we're going to talk about, does bullying happen more often than adults think? And I and my team agree that yes. A lot of times adults wipe it off or brush it off as, oh, it's no big deal. They're just fighting. They're friends. But what they don't realize is that it happens behind the scenes a lot more than we all are aware of. And when we ask students, does bullying happen more often than adults think? Here were some of their responses. Yes, so much more than they know. It happens mostly online. It happens secretly. Kids don't tell anyone, and when they do, they just tell part of the story. Most kids do not want to be a part of it, and or be, as most students we come into contact with, they don't want to be the snitch, whoever tells on the party that's bullying or is any part of that, because they don't want to be in trouble, not so much with the administration, but they don't want to be in trouble with their peer groups. And that is huge for a lot of the students that we work with. And a lot of them also feel like they don't have a trusted adult that they can talk to. They feel like the adults they talk to are going to turn their backs on them or give them a lecture or not give them the support that they need. So that our department really tries to tell kids and give them confidence, open those communication lines, and give them a trusted adult that they're able and feel confident to talk with. So that's why during NTI we created, and we shared this in our last presentation, the NTI support links. And these are for teachers support. We have one for parents as well as students. And if you go into these links, you'll click on the bullying icon or picture, and then it will list tons of things that teachers can use during NTI and when we're back on a normal schedule that they can share with their parents, that they can share with their classes. And we just want to show you a few that we feel like are most important at this time and that they can use currently. So here are some websites that I'm going to quickly talk about or touch base on that will help students and teachers, as well as parents, that teachers can go immediately and use. So if you look at cyberbullying tactics, this basically just gives how students are bullying people on the internet. So it is from stopbullying.gov, and it's all the different tactics and ways students are able and have learned how to cyberbully others. So really important. If you go to the second one, it's suggested age appropriate apps. And this is good because it's apps for learning, but it's also for fun. So it doesn't have to be, I need you to complete all of these apps, or here's apps to do reading and math. It's something that's fun for all ages, from like preschool through high school, that teachers can use if they have some downtime for NTI for students, or if they're just wanting to give them other resources or options if they finish their NTI work. The next one is pacer.org and stopbullying.gov. We use these quite often in our department for our presentations, for different resources. And these have lessons on them. They have videos. They have creative ideas of how to speak with students who might be going through some bullying issues. So both of those are excellent sites. And then we have National Online Safety. And this actually is a full safety training for schools. So if any admins are listening, this might be something that you could go to and implement, or have your team, your leadership team, look at and implement for online safety throughout your entire school. And then if you look below, we have our first teacher training, and that's the PD that we did on April 17th. So you can click that and use that as well. And then we also linked the parent training video that we completed. So 2 extra resources, as well as the one we're completing right now, if you want to go back and look at recorded ones that we did. So when you go to like pacers.com, they actually have, if you look at the red arrow and you go to classroom, there are already distance learning lessons created for you. So it's nothing that you have to recreate. And it's for all ages, and they split it up by grade level. So there's an elementary one, there's a middle school one, and a high school one, which is excellent because no one has to go back and reinvent the wheel. And it is separated, so it's easy to find exactly what you need. And if you see the all-in on the screen, that is an excellent activity. They make cards where you can have all-in cards that are blank, or they are already filled in that you could use. Say you're doing a morning meeting, or just a counseling activity for the counselors out there. And it's how can you help others be all in about preventing bullying within your classroom, within your school. So the teacher could have students create their own all-in cards, and then whatever they want or choose to write on there, they can do that within their classroom. For example, all in, give someone in the class a compliment would be an example that you might see on one of those cards. So these are excellent resources, again, that will help students and teachers and parents just be more aware of the cyberbullying issue, and also have some available resources right at their fingertips. All right, so I'm going to give it back to Crystal.
All right, one thing that we've noticed throughout the school year, I know I've done some training with the principals and assistant principals. And when we come to schools or we talk to teachers about different things that were going on, we ask them about their SBDM policies. And I know everyone doesn't have an SBDM if you're AIS, but you should still have that policy. I know this is something that is mandated. Every state should have a bullying prevention. Every state has a has a bullying prevention law or policy. And with that, they're required certain things from schools, and the policy should be there. And so we want to make sure as teachers, you know that this exists. You should be able to speak with your administration. You should be able to speak to someone on the SBDM team, or you can see this in your bylaws books. I know when I was at McFerrin, we had the books, so you could go back and look to see what the different policies were. But there should be a anti-bullying policy within your school. And within that policy, this should be where you or your team, whoever at your school originally started this, but where your definition of bullying is. How are you going to report? How do students report in your building? How do things look at your school? And then also, how is the situation handled at your school? These things did come with an original template, but the school was to design it for what they needed. And so as things change, I just want to remind you, teachers and any administrators that are listening, as things change, you may want to come back and review that document. You may want to come back and edit that document. We are seeing a lot of different things that are coming up, and things are shifting more to cyber. And a lot of times there weren't a lot of cyber bullying type of things in those policies. It was kind of just glazed over. And so it is a good thing, teachers, to know that it exists, but also to hold your administration accountable for following. Are we following it the way, this happened with this student? Let's look into the policy to see what should be done, or how is this going to be handled? Is this a level 1, 2, 3, or 4? Or what are we going to do about it? And if we're honest, it may not be updated, but with everything going on now, this is a great time. If we're forming, at the end of the year, we used to form different committees. Whatever committee, whoever's committee is over this type of thing, or you may want to create a committee for this would be a great time to look back over that and reestablish your anti-bullying or your bullying prevention policies. Here at the bottom, we have put the template. So it's a link to the template that can be shared. It's a Google Doc. And so you can go in to see the original, but also copy it and then go from there to create your own, making sure that you're including the things that your school needs, the things that are happening at your school. Every school's different, and you may have different things going on. So make sure that you are customizing to what you need at your school based upon the template. When you do get finished with that, this is something that, to me, it should be visible. It should be posted. People should know about it. The students should know that it's something that exists. Families should know that this is something that exists. So if something happens, you can follow that, and they know that this is something that is there, and this is something that is being enforced. Right?
As Kathleen Receiver in the chat pointed out, historically, cyberbullying prevention was taught in the technology lab. And as we move towards one-to-one devices and more STEM labs, we don't have those dedicated technology teachers. So there might be a school that their policy was technology teacher teaches about cyberbullying. Okay, but what if that's changed? So I think that's a great idea to revisit those policies and find out who is going to talk to kids about being safe when they're using technology and not bullying.
All right, so as we wrap up our time, I just want to make sure everybody knows, again, that we are here, we exist. There are several different ways that you can report bullying if something is going on, even though we are not physically in school. If things are going on, we are still here to support. We can do a Google Meet, we can do a hangout, we can get those faces, we can talk to the people that we need to talk to get these things fixed, and we can intervene. So we want to let you know that you can call the bullying tip line at 888-393-6780. Again, there's a QR code if that's easier for people to do. And then we also wanted to show you can go to the JCPS website. Even though now the screen, it looks different, it may have NTI information on it, the interfacing does not change. So what's at the top and what's at the bottom of the screen has not changed. So at the top right or the bottom right of the screen, you will still find that stop sign with the B inside. We call that the B button. You can click there and it will lead you to our compliance hotline. Once you get inside, this is what you'll see. There are several different things that can be reported on the compliance hotline, but in bullying prevention, Janet does handle the things that come through with bullying and harassment. Joe Del Ren and Shalyn Comich, they are in internal auditing, and they handle the other situations, but we just want to make sure that you are aware this is the place to go if you wanted to report something that was going on. And this is for teachers, students, administrators. We have all kinds of reports that come in. To the bottom left-hand side, it says begin a new report. That's where you're going to click. You'll go through a series of questions and answer those questions. And one thing I want to remind everybody, and teachers, please let your family, students know, at the end of this, it will give them a code. It will give them an access code. They need to hold on to that. It's so important that they hold on to that information. That is how they will get back into the system where it says follow up on a report. That's where they put that code in so they can get back to the information, or they can go back and upload pictures as evidence, or they can upload the screenshots of the things that have been sent to their student or to themselves. This is where you can go back and get that. So it's really important that they hold on to that code, so they can get back into the system after they have reported. So I was looking at the live chat as we went. I don't see a lot of questions. I do see a lot of comments, and we want to say thank you so much for your positive comments. Teachers, again, if you go back to those live links, everything you need is there. Our past presentations are there, and if you need anything from us, you can always email us. Again, I'm Crystal Carter. We have Steve Giddings and Brittany Nip, and my resource teachers. They're fabulous. They're awesome. They rock. And then we also have my awesome clerk, Ms. Janet Young, who's on live right now. And anything from the tip line is going directly to her. So if there's anything else we can do for you, we thank you so much. And we want to turn it back over to our host. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate everything you all do to help keep our students safe and our staff informed. Next up, we have student safety and supports. And I believe I have Brooke here. How are you doing today, Brooke?
You do? I'm doing great.
Great.
We are having some technical difficulties. We're trying to get our colleagues who are presenting with us from the cabinet in, but they're having a difficult time getting
I did send them 2 invites today because tell them to look for if they got an email from Stephen Durham at around 12 o'clock, because we can't invite people to the chat until the chat is able to be open. So they were the first 2 I invited. Yeah.
Get in touch with them, and I will be right back with you all.
Okay. While she gets that ready, I will just share what else we have going on today. And like they were saying, so if you want those bullying resources right here, you just click on where their names are, and you can go to that link. And then we have student safety and supports. Brooke is here. She's a JCPS employee. We also have people join us sometimes that are outside of the JCPS domain. And since the way the Google Hangout Meet works, it's locked down to just JCPS people. So I have to invite them personally via an email. And so we're waiting. Hopefully Crystal and Chad can join us. And then later on today, we have What's Your Question? Using action research to hone your practices. And then we have PDL supporting new teachers. So we still have programming left for today. But right now, the last one was great because it's learning about how we can keep kids safe from bullying. And now we're going to kind of follow along with that with student safety and supports, because school is a safe spot for a lot of these students. And now they are out of that, and we're doing a lot of things different. So we want to make sure student safety is still very important. So let me go back and see if Brooke has had any luck getting the others.
We can resend a link. It looks like they're getting an error message saying that they're not allowed to join the video call. So I don't know if maybe they're logged into a personal. Do they need to log out of their Google accounts to be able to get in?
I'm not sure. Just when I created the after,
or as like an Outlook invitation.
It should be a Hangout invitation. Tell them to try going to it from an incognito window. I guess that's one option. Hold on, I'm getting, make sure they're using the correct Google account or it won't work.
So they have to have a Google account to use it?
Yes, so they should be using a correct Google account.
So I think that one of them is using their student's account, but will it let them join this?
Probably no, they'll have to use their Google account, yes. Okay.
We might be in trouble because I think one of them does not have a Google account. So is there another way we can troubleshoot it?
So I'm thinking maybe have the one, make sure they're using their Google account, because they've had the invite with that KYGov email address. And so it would have to, again, I just sent that. I'm not sure how the back end works on everything, but I would assume they would have to have a Google account created with that email.
Oh, okay. Well, we might be in a bit of a jam then, because my guess is it's going to take some time to get that done. I think our impression of it was that they would just be able to get in pretty easily with that invite.
Yeah, I got a text here. My team is working behind the scenes to help make this happen, and they said that they added them. So I guess I don't. Let me see if I just added them. It's because we haven't had many outside JCPS. Have them try again, but it only works per day. So if they are presenting again tomorrow, we'll have to add. So I added the invite today, and Elaine added them. So have them try again, and they shouldn't have to use Google. So they should just click on any link we gave them, and they should be invited.
All right, I think what Crystal's issue is maybe that she's logging in as her child. Yeah,
tell her to use an incognito window and then access that link and try going in that way. That way she's not...
I'm not sure that I know exactly how to do that.
Okay, she would just go to whatever browser she's on. She would go up to File and go to New Incognito Window from File. So File, New Incognito Window. And there should be another invite that just came from Elaine. Because, yeah, if they're a lot of times if you're signed into a Google account like your students, it's kind of hard to get totally signed out of it. So that's when we use the incognito. Yeah. Yes. So I'm going to we'll take a few minute break, and I'm just going to do a couple other things. And if you just want to speak out when they're here, that'll be great.
I will do. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. So like I said, we've been using the jcps.me/NTI page, and let me go to the home page here. And it's a great tool. It has a teacher toolkit, student toolkit, and parent and guardian toolkit. So if you as a teacher or having parents need help, have questions, direct them here. This is one of the places where you can send them for resources. And then, of course, we're finding the shows when you come to the virtual training schedule, and you can see the shows. And we're going to have shows up until the end of school. We're working now to populate the calendar. Some of them will be on demand, but we'll continue to have some live shows every day. I'm actually pretty excited. We're going to have some new shows. I just talked to a friend today, Eric Caston at Middletown Elementary, is going to show us how he's doing this cool badging system with his students during NTI that his students are really into. And I was talking to him on the phone today, helping him out with some Google issues, and he was telling me about that. And I was like, we need to get you on the Digital Learning Channel. So speaking of the Digital Learning Channel, let's hop on over there. It's a YouTube channel, JCPS Digital Learning Channel, and you can subscribe to it. You should have a subscribe button right here. So if you haven't clicked subscribe, please do that now. And for example, if you'll look, this is yesterday's. So if you're looking at the schedule and you're like, oh, I missed that session, it was Wednesday afternoon, you can look here. But my team is hard at work in editing each of those training episodes into individual episodes. So you can see now we have the Gale Professional Development ebook series that just got published. And I could be wrong, but I think that was on yesterday. And I'm betting Matt Balk has been hard at work and edited that and got that up. But everything that's been on the channel that you've seen live or heard about live or caught a little bit of live will end up. We'll find the best episode of that. If it presented 3 or 4 times, we'll find one that covered all the information, and we will get that on the Digital Learning Channel so you can come back and revisit. So for example, let's say you learned how to use Screencastify and you were using Screencastify for NTI. Then we go back to school and you get a little rusty. You kind of forget some of those tips on how to get going on Screencastify, but you want to use it in the blended learning model you're using to teach. Well, you can just come back and look for the video on how to use Screencastify. And it does have a search feature, and also there's playlist. So you can look right now, we have a related arts special area playlist, the NTI support playlist, English teacher playlist. So Google support playlist, math teacher, study island. So whatever you're looking for, you can search for the playlist. For example, I know during this time, there's a lot of teachers using Clever. We can search for Clever. And we'll have the Clever playlist come up, how to use the Teacher Clever portal with Kathleen Receiver, using Clever with your students. Here is the live show that Kathleen and I did, Clever 101. So if you watch that or like, I kind of forget what they said about this part, you can come back and watch that. How to have students log in, how STCs use it. And this isn't just for teachers. I'm working supporting parents that are having issues at home. And if I have a parent saying, hey, my kid is having a hard time getting onto Clever, I come to the Digital Learning Channel, I grab this 3-minute video, how students log into the Clever portal, and I email that to the parent. So you can actually, if you have people you know that are having issues, for example, if you're a librarian and some of your teachers at your school are telling you they're having an issue with an ebook, you can come here and look for one of the programs, one of the shows about using ebooks and share that with them. But I am going to the Digital Learning Channel all the time, grabbing different videos and sending them to people that are looking for information. So that's one of the reasons, and we're so thankful that we have all these people join us to do the shows, because then that gives us the ability to get this content on here and accessible for when people really need it. Because sometimes you catch it live, you're like, that's great, I got it now. But sometimes you need to revisit. You might need to pause and go through it a couple times. And that's why we have the channel for you. I'm going to check back in. Brooke, have we had any success? All right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
I'm talking to them right now, and they don't see an invitation. They are trying to do it through an incognito window, and they're struggling doing that as well.
Okay, so
if it's something that we would want to reschedule for a time, I'm not prepared to go over the slides that they have prepared.
Okay.
That information I feel like really needs to come from the cabinet and not from JCPS. And they're still, like I said, they're still struggling trying to get in.
Okay, that's fine. I'm sorry. So they're not seeing an email from Elaine in their. They're not seeing an email from Elaine in their inbox.
They didn't, but let me see if they have one again.
Okay, have them double check, and we'll go over to Twitter, and then if by any chance they do see that, just let me know. And hopefully you are following us on Twitter. We are JCPS-DI for Digital Innovation. If you're an educator, and I know, so I'll talk about my beginning Twitter experience and that of my wife. In the beginning, Twitter was like people kind of boasting or putting a spotlight on the cool things they were doing. And some people weren't really comfortable with that. And, even though you might be doing great things in your classroom, you know it, your students know it, but the district might not know it. Other teachers aren't necessarily benefiting from that. So get on Twitter, get comfortable putting a spotlight on the great things you're doing so it can be shared with other people. So let's see what's going on Twitter. Student safety and supports coming up today. So we're advertising this session. And let's look and see if we have any yes cards posted today. I'm going to go to JCPS. Yes. So in case you don't know, a yes card is a way to celebrate somebody that is doing an awesome job. So for example, we have Mary here who looks like she teaches at Conway. She sent 2 yes cards today. One to Mr. Foster to recognize him for his work to provide special online PD sessions on quizzes, Screencastify, and Google Meet for our Conway teachers. That's awesome. Way to go, Mr. Foster. So Mr. Foster helped provide training so that the teachers at Conway can use Screencastify and Google Meet, which are some of our core NTI tools. And Mrs. Sears and Mr. Poteet, our best counselors, regularly update the resources for parents and teachers. They design their own website for NTI. I am just amazed by how proficient teachers are becoming with technology tools during this break. I've really enjoyed watching my wife go from a great art teacher to a great art teacher that is using technology to teach when she's here and her students are elsewhere. She has Draw with Mrs. Durham sessions. She's sending out assignments through Google Classroom. And this is all things she wasn't doing a couple weeks ago, but she learned from coming watching episodes and getting a lot of help from me. But now she has those tools, and they'll be able to take her forward as she continues teaching students. So let's see if I can find any more yes cards. All right, here we have one. Oh, Mary is like, Mary, you're a yes card superstar. So she sent one to Miss Little. She wants to recognize for creativity in designing a Cougar Call Out newsletter that recognizes teachers during NTI. This is great. Sometimes I wonder if I really think teachers might be working harder during NTI than they ever have before, because before they kind of were the master of their classroom, and they managed and taught students, but now many of them are learning brand new tools and brand new ways to do their jobs. So I've been very impressed by all the work I've seen teachers doing. So it looks like we have a couple yes cards in there. While they go, and while talking about how hard teachers have been working, I'm going to share this video, a 7-minute video about 7 tips for remote teaching. Every once in a while, when we have some extra time between episodes, we like to play this video just to help keep everything in perspective about how to teach during NTI.
Do you want me to jump in now? It sounds like I've got a colleague that's on, Ann Perryman, and she is going to go over some of those slides.
Yes, I'm really sorry your team had technical difficulty, but yes, we're happy to have you.
Yeah,
yes.
They're going to continue to try to get a hold of Kathleen and Elaine and see if they can troubleshoot on the back end. And
okay.
If they can hop in, hopefully we can make it work that
way. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Ann, for joining us.
Thank you. I was not prepared to be live, so excuse me that I don't have on any lipstick or anything.
It is perfectly fine. You look great. Yes, yes. I'm just happy you're comfortable enough to turn your camera on. Sometimes people, it's so much more engaging with the camera on than it is without. So thank you.
Well, and that shows true commitment and support from Ann to be able to do that. So I appreciate bailing us out, Ann.
Yes.
All right, so we are here today to talk about safety, and we're probably going to do a pretty abbreviated version of this since we're having a difficult time getting our partners in here. But our partners from CPS were prepared to talk today a little bit about the referral process and whatnot. So we're just going to go through some of these slides and see if we can kind of shoot from the hip here.
So yes, go to present. If you turn off that hide next to the blue button.
Got it. All right.
And then if you don't mind turning on closed caption, the little CC right there. And make it large. Yeah. Awesome.
All right, good to go. All right, so our objectives today are to ensure that child abuse and neglect can still be recognized and reported. We know that this is a different landscape that we're all navigating, and we want to make sure that the adults that are working with kids and families are still able to recognize those signs. And then we're here to support staff who continue to provide services to kids and families. We want staff to know what to do if they witness something on a video call or on a phone call, or if maybe a family member or a student discloses something to them. We want them to know what to do, who to be able to ask questions for if they have them. And then we just want to provide additional guidance and resources. So we know that this is an incredibly stressful situation that we're all facing, and it can be super scary for everyone. And we want staff to know how to get families and kids in touch with the resources that they might need during this time. So the rationale behind our conversation is really why we're here today to talk about all of this. Children in homes where instability was already present are now at an even greater risk. We know that with heightened emotions and uncertainty, that can worsen situations that our families have going on, especially our families that already had mistreatment and where violence was present before. Reports of child abuse are down, which we know is really likely due to fewer adults being able to identify kids, not necessarily due to incidences of abuse decreasing. So we know that nationally, teachers and other educators account for about 20% of abuse reports. So we know that it's because kids are physically not coming into our building, because they're not going to their daycare providers, they're not going to their community centers. We just want to make sure that we still have a vigilant eye on our kids and are able to, really recognize those signs when we need to. And then Kentucky leads the nation in rates of child abuse and neglect, and that's definitely not a statistic that we're proud of. We want to make sure that, we're all social distancing and we're encouraging people to be healthy at home, but as we well know, that's not always a safe place for all of our kids, so we want to make sure that our social distancing measures doesn't cause child abuse and neglect to fly underneath that radar. And then we've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs on here, and that's really just a reminder. Everybody has seen this, and it's just there to remind you that if our kids' safety needs aren't met or if their basic needs aren't met, then it's going to be difficult for them to engage in learning. So, and then Anne, if you want to hop in, we've got our JCPS policy here, the memo that is sent out every year that gives us more information on the JCPS policies and procedures. Let's see. And then, of course, there's the Kentucky state statutes, the duty to report. As educators, we're all mandated reporters. And then this is the information to make a report. There is a non-emergency reporting online web-based referral that you can do. But if it is an emergent situation, then we want to make sure that we're making that phone call. And then I will let Ann take over.
And Brooke, will you still do the slides, please?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So basically, if you do make a report, this slide here just really talks about what information you're going to be asked. And many of us have made reports before, but this is just a good reminder of like the information that you'll need to know when you're making a child abuse or neglect report. Next slide.
I think this is great reminder to show, like, now that we're away from school, we might think that that's one part that it isn't going on anymore. And it is still going on. It is still a responsibility. It is something we need to be aware of.
Yes, absolutely. And really, as Brooke was saying, one of the things that is a concern is that reports are down because adults aren't around children as much, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening. So just having that awareness is really important as well. So if you do still have to make a report, that information is on there, and just a reminder of what type of information you need to have ready when you do make the report. Oftentimes, like, I tend to do them, on the web, because you can, you've got some time to kind of, write a narrative, but if you don't, you can call that number as well. And then
there's a link embedded in here, so I know that anybody who wants to access this PowerPoint, they can. And this is just those frequently asked questions that CPS gets most often. So if there are questions about, does this qualify for a report? I made a report and I never saw someone come out to my school to talk to that child, or I never heard back from them that something was opened. This gives more information on kind of what is acceptable, what things maybe might not meet criteria, but I know what Crystal would have told you today is even if you're not 100% sure that it meets criteria or not, go ahead and report it. It's not our job as JCPS staff to investigate. That will be in their realm. So if you provide information, that's information that they have that they can make those decisions.
So basically, I always thought, and if I thought something, I need to do something, right? And if it's determined like, no, that doesn't meet criteria, that's okay. But I still did my part as the teacher.
Absolutely. And
yes.
Everybody has that little voice in their head. Make sure that you listen to that voice. It's very important, and especially, what to look for and listen for as we're navigating things through this landscape of NTI. When speaking to students, don't be afraid to ask those questions of who's there with you, what kind of work or school are other people in your household doing, asking them what they had for breakfast, making sure that they're getting fed during the day. If students aren't participating in that video group chat, maybe ask, for your older students, ask if anybody has seen them, if they know what's going on, of why they're not there. Making sure to change those changes in behavior, and I don't know if it would be difficult to see or not from a video chat, but noticing if there's any marks or bruises, and taking that opportunity to ask them what it was that happened, making sure that you don't do that in your whole group chat, scheduling time privately to follow up with them, but making sure that you are following up with them. noticing people in the home, any safety hazards, exposed wiring, drugs or alcohol that's noticeable, and then trying assignments that that are fun but also provide insight, like some of those questions of, what's going on in the household. Sorry, Ann, I'm stealing your thunder now.
No, that's fine. You're great. Some other just kind of student safety suggestions, always have that open line of communication and being able to listen to talk. I know with my child, I have noticed that listening in on some of their, classroom conversations, there is that time for conversations where teachers are checking in. And I think that is just so important because you may get some information about some things that the family might actually need. It may have nothing to do with child abuse or neglect, but you may be able to get some awareness about some resources that the family may need and kind of make some connections. It's important to be flexible, use varying methods of communication, phone calls and video chats and all of those things are great as well. And just kind of keeping in mind, this just is some of the outline of, talk to other staff members in your school, like your family resource center coordinators, your school counselors, your mental health practitioners. They may be able to reach out to families or students that you're concerned about and kind of make those connections and help them out. Thinking about, a school counselor or your mental health practitioner just might have some more areas of expertise. And so they can always be a good support for you as well. So keeping that in mind. Brooke, you want to catch the next slide?
Yeah, then communicating with siblings teachers. We've got several schools that have kids that are in multiple grades. So having that conversation to see if they're noticing the same kinds of changes in behavior or hesitancy to participate. The great thing is our teachers have relationships already established with these kids. So they should be able to notice those types of things. And then we've got plenty of support staff in our building. So, making that report can sometimes be a little unsettling or daunting. I'm sure most of the people that are watching this have made those types of reports before, but these are your staff in the building that can really troubleshoot with you, or if you aren't sure if maybe it is a report that needs to be made, these are your staff in the building and throughout the district that can really help you talk over that situation and make that decision. And then CPS gave us their contact list here, so you'll be able to access that on the video link. So if you know that a family member is already active with CPS and you know who that worker is, but you don't know how to get in touch with them, this is a great resource. If you know that they're active, but you're not sure who the active worker is or how to get in touch with them, you can always reach out to our people personnel staff, our school social workers at the elementary school level, or our ADPPs at the middle and high school level. We all work in neighborhood places, so we work in close proximity to the CPS staff, and usually, can get in touch with them pretty easily. And then there's some other resources on here. A few I wanted to go over. This COVID-19 Face It movement is a movement from Post There to help prevent child abuse. And it's got some great resources on here, especially during this time. It's great information for some of our parents. I'll try to go quickly through some of these. If you haven't been watching, make sure to check out the JCPS Family Engagement Team is putting a lot of good information out there. They have town hall meetings every Thursday, and I think it's at 3:00 every Thursday. And last week they did a discussion on mental health and on safety online. So if you want to go back and look at that, that's a great one to access. And then the last one I want to talk about is the JCPS School Community Resource Guide. Our people personnel staff put together a Google site just to compile resources and make things a little bit more streamlined. But there's good information on here for parents, kids, and staff. But one I wanted to go over is mental health. We know our kids are really struggling during this time. We know our kids were struggling before this. And then adding the undue pressure and the isolation can really be challenging for our kids and families. So this gives a good amount of information on different agencies in our community that are providing mental health. And the majority, if not all of them, are offering services virtually. So if you know kids are struggling, get in touch with your mental health practitioner, your counselor, your Frisky coordinator, and most of them know how to access those resources. And then this is just the references that we have from our talk. But the last thing we wanted to talk about is April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and I know that we're getting in right at the end of April. But what their department is asking is for us to wear blue tomorrow in support of National Child Abuse Prevention Month. And it gives some activities that you can do with your kids, color a pinwheel, or paint it blue or whatnot. And then they've got some hashtags here that if that is something that you want to partake in tomorrow to wear blue, then make sure that when you post it on social media, you use some of these hashtags. So, and we had left time for questions. I'm not sure if we'll have questions or not, or how much time we've got left for them before our time is up.
Actually, we had Chad was in the chat. He was able to join on the YouTube chat, and he was answering questions in there and contributing to the conversation. First of all, I want to say, Brooke, thank you. You are a rock star. You were able to get in your whole presentation, without all your support people. And Anne, thank you so much for showing up. I really appreciate that I didn't have to talk for 30 minutes and just fill the air. But yes, great job, ladies. Thank you for that information. We appreciate it. And like they said, their resources on the digital training schedule, so you can access that there. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
And I have Sandra ready to go. Sandra is going to be talking to us about what's your question using action research to hone your practices. You ready to go, Sandra?
I am indeed.
Great.
I remember the right way to share this so that
you're getting there.
We're not facing the same dilemma that we faced yesterday. Can you hear me? And
I can, and I can see your screen. You're doing good. Now, if you just want to go and click on that little hide next to the blue button, turn your volume up, and then come over to where it says CC for closed captioning.
I have question, notes, pointer, tips.
You do. Interesting. Well, we don't have to worry about it this time. I'll see. I bet it's probably in settings, but I don't want to take too much of your time going through and looking for that. But yeah, normally there's a little CC right there. I'm surprised. Try clicking on more. Click on that gear and click more, if you don't mind.
Download.
No. Okay, that's okay. You got your volume turned up. Will people listen? That's okay if we don't have subtitles this time. All right.
Okay, and if you would please man the chat for me in case
I will.
There are questions, you can jump in, and that would be awesome.
All right, I will be happy to do that.
Okay, good deal. So welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Hogue. I am ELA instructional lead for our AIS schools, and I'm glad that you have joined me this afternoon. I know that it's later in the day and we may be feeling tired, but hopefully this session will inspire those of you who are interested in or curious about action research. And if not, hopefully those of you in attendance are interested in improving your practices, because that's what this session is designed to help us to talk about and think through. So the journey for this afternoon will involve these things: defining action research. And I'm going to kind of give you the global definition, but I'm also going to give you my AIS flavored definition of action research and how it's utilized in our camp. The why, because I think whys are important. You need to not just know what to do, but why that action is important and why it matters. And so we'll give the why. We'll talk about building background knowledge and its importance in action research. Then the what, right? Thinking about methods and approaches and some of the benefits. And then we'll look ahead to some projects that are in the work for next year in JCPS. So first, the why. Action research is and this is the AIS flavored definition, but action research is a teacher's or a team's or a school's. So it could be as small as an individual teacher honing their craft. It could be a collaborative team working to tackle a problem of practice, or it can be an entire school's mission. And you strategically investigate a problem. Once again, you're looking at it as though there's something here, there's a rub here, there's a problem, and we're going to tackle it head on. And those challenges shouldn't just be super simple or generic. They should be, as an academic institution, things that are interfering with academic progress of students. And then they require intentional application of research-based and sometimes creative, high leverage moves on the part of those seeking to tackle those problems to improve the practices that once again will lead to evidence of student learning. We need to have evidence that our actions are positively impacting students in academic ways. Now, some will argue that we need to consider the whole child, and I don't disagree with that, but our primary function as an education system is to advance the academic performance of students. And so that has to be out front. And so that evidence of what we're doing has to show up in student work. And so if you look at all of these graphics I have at the bottom, they are all attached to research connected to action research, where you'll get a more academic definition. Some of them are chapters from professional research books. Some are professional articles from research publications. Others are lighter in nature, like Edutopia. And this one on the far right is most user-friendly, the Action Research Guide. And so what you'll see is a variety of the things I've learned over the past several years about what it means to be an action researcher. But once again, each of those you can click, and depending on the level of nerddom you live in, you can just, kind of have a buffet of ways to explore that. So I encourage you to do that at your leisure. So the why. This connects with JCPS systems, right? Our essential systems for a strong learning climate. System one, that's not an error. I left that off intentionally because action research doesn't directly connect with that. System one speaks to the standards, and this is more zoom out from the teacher perspective, so that one is not included in this list. But action research involves data. You have to have evidence, once again, that what you're doing is having an impact on students. It involves instructional planning, because once again, we're making strategic moves. Progress monitoring and analysis of student work, that just speaks to the fact that we have evidence that what we're doing, once again, is impacting students, and that evidence shows up in real time, in real ways that we can point to in the performance of our students. And once again, it's academic and it's absolutely professional learning and growth. So the goal is to lean into questioning, right? As educators, and in fact, when I taught most of my years, I taught early primary, and I always had on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper the word why. And I had it attached in front of the letter A at my alphabet. The kids never noticed it. No one ever paid attention to it, but that why was for me. And I always referred to that when I had a day where I was like, you know what, I am the best teacher rocking it out right now. And I would always pause to say, why do I feel that way? Why do I feel that things are coasting along beautifully? And I needed to force myself to think of evidence that would support the way I was feeling, right? How was I positively impacting students? On the other side of that coin is why? If something didn't go well, right? If something bombed big time, why did it bomb? And so I was all the time in that reflective mode saying, how am I positively impacting students, and what am I doing that is not positively impacting students? And so, I'm from the school of Marva Collins out of Chicago, who says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but if the kids fail, it's our fault. And so I always seek, and I still do that now, to push myself to find the why behind the what. So you can think about it as something as simple as my practices and student learning would improve if I. So it doesn't always have to be couched as a question, but questions work for me. But lean into those before you go exploring a question. And another thing to think about with the questions for action research, you don't want to choose something so simple that all it takes is a Google search and I have all the answers I need, right? Action research should be these big rock challenging things that you're going to have to wrestle with, right? There is beauty in the wrestling with this big idea that, you know what, if I adjust this piece, my students will accelerate. Because once again, I work with AIS, Accelerated Improvement Schools. So we're coming largely from behind with my school population. So I'm looking to accelerate. And so more than likely, there aren't any quick fixes or magic wands, because if so, someone would have discovered them. So we all the time have to be in this dance of wrestling with what it takes to advance student learning. And so before you tackle, though, your action research project, you need to do some talking, chat with colleagues. We do that all the time anyway. Pick the brains of your AIC, those thinking partners that that more seasoned teacher or that hot new graduate teacher who is just on fire with every practice that he or she is putting into place. But lean on those thinking partners to help you kind of flesh things out. You also want to read, devour those professional texts that feed you. And then learning. You just have to be in that mindset where I'm on a mission to grow and to learn. And so there are several methods for approaching action research. And as I said, I've read a great deal about action research. I live as an action researcher. The work I do now, I always push through the lens of action research. So I'm always reading and taking in new material. And then I'm using that to help inform or help me to move forward or to accelerate, once again, because I'm AIS, some of the work that's happening with my schools. And so that's the way my brain functions anyway. I don't know that I could separate myself from it at this point. But in this first method, you identify, you have a focus. Once again, you can't tackle everything. And this is also true with our AIS folks, and Dr. Polio spoke to this in our last principals meeting. He talked about how you have to be strategic about what your school believes. You have to be crystal clear with every employee, every family, every student in your school about about your mission, about what you're working to advance, right? And so if that focus is unclear, then it's likely to fracture, right? So you have to have a clear focus of what you're going to do to accelerate. And it can't be everything under the sun, because we know we can't do everything to perfection, right? So you want to find something that's high leverage, that's going to get you some traction, that you can see the potential for building on other growth as a result of it. And then once again, you do research. You have to be reading all the time. You have to devour new information to help build that background knowledge that you need to make informed actions. And then you specify that specific focus, and then you implement, you intervene, you gather the data. It's research 101. So you gather the data, you analyze it. What is it telling us about what students do, what they know, what they can do? And then you act from there. But the cycle continues. It's not a one-shot deal, because once you are in a headspace when you're an action researcher, it's hard to turn it off, as I've mentioned earlier. Now, I talked about the broader body of action research. Because I'm coming from a need to accelerate with my position, and I think that's true with many of us, not just with AIS schools, action research can be broader than that. It can focus on lighter things, not the need to accelerate so quickly. So it can be more, I don't want to say flowery, but it can be lighter in nature than what I'm looking to do here. So it can be things that aren't necessarily directly tied to the academic piece, but through my lens, that has to be a critical component. And it's a messy process. It's not linear. You don't, as I said, it can't be something that if I do Google, if I read one resource, then I've solved my problem, right? That's not the appropriate problem for action research. It's a messy process. And so you have to go through, these spirals, and you keep coming back to it and saying, I tried this, but that didn't, that it shows promise with this part, but there's another piece over here that's not working for the kids at all. And once again, you have to be in a position where you can check your ego and say, if the kids fail, this is my fault. So you have to be able to own how your actions or the moves or the structures that you put in place for kids are shaping what happens with the students and with, once again, their academic performance. And so it's messy. You try something, and then you revise that and you go back in with another idea, and you just keep the process going, because you are, I like to say this term, doggedly determined, right? You're doggedly determined to approach that problem. Another method I enjoy talking about is plan, do, study, act. It's real simple. It's to the point. And if you click on that graphic, it will take you to a link where it kind of expands so you can see those things certainly with more clarity than you can see it now. But each of these graphics, just kind of speak to the fact that it's a process. It's messy. It's not linear. It's not clean. It's not something that I can start on Monday and I have it solved by Wednesday. It's just not, that's not an appropriate topic for a full-on action research project. A sample approach And once again, this is a link over here as well. It'll take you to this document that's about 40 pages ish. It's really teacher friendly, user friendly. So for the coaches or for admin or instructional leaders, this is a good document to mine for ideas to help, get things started in your building. And just speaking from that lens of a coach or admin, action research, once again, can just be a single teacher. It can be a team. So it may be from your administrator or from your coaching position, you're tapping on the shoulder of someone who you see the potential within, but they're ready for that something else, and you can see they're kind of stalling out a little bit. You may encourage them to tackle a problem of practice, and it is amazing teacher leadership within your building for them to do so. So with this approach, it's, what's the problem? And you brainstorm, what are some of the ways we might tackle that problem? So this one is a question-based approach to thinking about the action research. But once again, it's cyclical. So it's going to spiral. It's going to keep going. It's living and breathing and moving all the time. Another sample approach, defining the focus or problem, collecting. This one has more steps. That's why, once again, my heart gravitates to plan, do, study, act, because it's clean. But this one, the more steps you have, the more likely folks are to get some of those steps out of order. But you're defining a problem, you're gathering information, once again, building that background knowledge and making sense of that. And then you plan the action really strategic. You're really strategic about what moves you're going to make to advance student learning. And then you take the actions, you collect the data, you analyze, and then you publish. And this one, they recommend publishing. And that's one thing I want to say about action research is I don't want you to feel like it's something extra. It's not something that will cause a detour or derail your practices. Quite frankly, it's the opposite. Action research will help you sharpen your practices, and it will bring greater clarity and focus to the work that you do. And so I don't want folks to think that, oh, here's just another thing that we're doing. Because if you're not careful, and I can remember this happening to me in the classroom, I was that teacher who, the custodians would knock on my classroom door at 10:30 and say, we're about to lock up the building. I'm going to need you to get out of here, right? It wasn't every day, but frequently I was that teacher because I never felt like everything was just the way I wanted it to be, right? I was seeking perfection, which wasn't an altogether bad thing, but maybe not the most appropriate work-life balance happening there, but always in pursuit of finding something that I could make better. And so you want to be in that space where you're all the time questioning your practice. If it gets to the point where you're like, and after a while I got to this point when I taught the same grade for many years in a row, I felt almost frustrated because I didn't even have to think about the work. Right? I didn't need the custodians to say, come on, it's time for you to leave. Although I could do busy work in there, but I felt like I could do it intuitively and there was not enough challenge in it for me. And so when things get to that point, it's imperative for us as educators, because if you're not careful, you'll stall out. It's imperative for us as educators to find that next challenge so that we keep the profession fresh for us, right? So that we continue to learn and grow. Because I always say, once you have figured it all out, Grayson, please stop. Once you have figured it all out, then, it's time to hang it up. It's time to stop. So once again, you select a focus, you collect the data, you analyze and interpret the data, and then you take action, right? So there's that 1, 2, 3, 4.
I was just thinking, if you don't mind me interrupting for a minute, don't you feel like this whole thing is going to be like a reset for a lot of teachers? Like I've already seen them embrace choice from the choice boards. And now when they go back, they want to use choice with their students. They've embraced technology. Now, I think when we go back, people are going to step away from technology for a bit, but then I think they will return and it'll be a valuable tool. And I think a lot of teachers are going to be realizing a lot of things that they're learning during this break, this time of NTI is going to change how they go back and teach. So I know in the beginning you were talking about, I wonder if people, this is a big undertaking to take on the approach you use, but I think people are going to be open to it after this reset.
I agree. I think we are in a space where, my goodness, you could approach this whole NTI window as action research, right? We are definitely facing problems of practice. Here's an example, how do I educate students who aren't in front of me, right? How do I educate students that I'm not seeing and interacting with on a daily basis? So, I mean, any and all of these challenges that we're facing, technology-wise, instructional delivery wise, contact with families wise, all of these make for perfect action research projects. And so, I'm glad you brought that up, because when I think about NTI, because I can't turn it off in my brain, for me, it's action research. And so, for an example, as a resource, as a leader for ELA and our AIS schools, I am trying all kinds of things that I consider action research, because I'm trying to remain connected with our schools when I'm not able to touch them. So I've tried a newsletter. I have an office hour where they can pop. Like, I'm trying a variety of things, and I'm in pursuit of answers to this question that presents a problem within my practice. And so I think you're right. This is a perfect springboard into planting, more of these seeds where teachers are thinking of themselves as researchers in the classroom. Because, like I said, I am of the mind that we should always, always, always be looking for a way to improve our practices, right? There's always something we could do better. And once you get to the point where you've arrived and there's nothing more you can do and nothing more you can say or work on to make yourself better, then it really is time to hang it up. Right? Which is why it was such a rub for me when I was like, my goodness, this is feeling intuitive. What am I missing here? And I intentionally found ways to increase the challenge for me in the work, because I knew, that felt uncomfortable to feel like, I don't really need to think about this anymore. That is frightening to me. So you're absolutely right. And thank you for bringing that up. And I hope that, like I said, this is a springboard into some projects that we're looking to next year, not just for our AIS schools, but for other schools across the district. So,
I've never seen a time where teachers they are in the mindset that you speak of, where they are constantly talking about new things, thinking about new things, trying to find workarounds. Those ones that were like you, this like, I've taught fourth grade for a couple of years, I got this. It isn't like that now. These people and they're constantly talking and searching and reaching for new ideas. So yes, I think it's great.
And I love how folks are connecting, right? So the new things that we're learning, as I watch the digital channel, and I tune in every day for at least a portion of the day.
Thank you.
Sometimes I'm rewinding to sessions and that kind of thing. But what I'm impressed by is how folks are taking what they're learning as new learning, like Jamboards. That's been extremely popular, and folks are folding that into their sessions. While their session isn't focused on Jamboards, they are looking for ways to integrate that. And the sessions on compelling questions, we had a couple of those last week and the week before, looking at those compelling questions and how many presenters are folding in that idea of the compelling questions. I know,
good point.
In our session yesterday, I was tapping into the DEP material. Now I already knew about the DEP material, but I was constantly looking for ways to connect that. And as someone who's working to help support teachers, I think that's a part that's something that I'm always aware of, that we need to finesse, which is not providing teachers with these isolated ways to grow, but instead showing them how to pull all of those things together to make something even greater than we had when we keep them as these nuggets independent of one another. So I love the connecting piece. I do.
Yes.
So the benefits to teachers, the benefits to, this is real time, folks, the benefits to teachers and to teams and to schools with action research. And once again, it's not just teachers. I worked collaboratively with a team out at Miners Lane last year, although that action research was cut short by the current state of NTI right now. But just working, you can work on it as a team. You don't need anyone to take the journey with you. You can be that lone soldier out there saying, I'm going to make my practices better, and set out on that journey on your own. But you can also be part of a collaborative team, either within your building or across buildings. The very first action research that I was a part of was a research study through U of L with a professor there, and we were exploring how the arts can enhance literacy in the classroom. And so we took that journey together, and there were 3 teachers, Shelley Barber, Laura Waz, and then Dr. Jean Ann Clyde out of U of L. And the 4 of us from 4 different schools if you count U of L, set out on this journey to explore. We didn't have the answers. I'm really comfortable in not having a beeline, point A to point B kind of answer to things. I enjoy wrestling with big ideas. And so it can be a team, either within or across schools. The work I did at Miners Lane this year involved looking at how do we think about interdisciplinary units of study, as opposed to thinking about, okay, this is math time. Although math has to be independent in my brain, it has its own workshop. But thinking about the rest of the day as a separate, having 2 workshops, having your day structured as here's workshop 1, which is math. Workshop 2 is all other contents, and they are working and playing in interdisciplinary ways. So we're not just reading for the sake of reading. We're reading as part of this bigger idea, which once again links into the work that Suzanne Kramer, Ryan New and his social studies team did last week with looking at compelling questions. We have this umbrella idea, and in this second workshop of the day, this is where we're exploring and using real application of reading, writing, science, social studies, because we're on a mission to answer these compelling questions. And then that ties into the backpack, because by the time we finish this mini unit of study, for example, over 2 weeks, just hypothetically, over 2 weeks, we finish this unit of study. When we get to the end, there should be a product, right? Because we have spent workshop time for 2 weeks solid. I'm just making that up. But we've spent 2 weeks solid on pursuing the answers to this compelling question. Then that should not automatically, but for me, intuitively, it feels like a great place for a backpack artifact. Now, do we need a traditional assessment that looks very much like standardized testing? Yeah, as long as kids have a K-prep at the end, there should be that component as well, but pulling those things together. So that's been an action research project that I've been pursuing with the teachers at Miners Lane and kind of sprinkled throughout some of our AIS schools over the course of this year. But once again, it's something I'm still wrestling with because we still have unfinished business. We don't have answers to all of those questions yet. But but here are some of the benefits. It'll improve, and I call myself a teacher researcher. And I think that feels like a badge of honor, certainly for me. But I want every teacher, I want my children's teachers to consider themselves teacher researchers, because that puts you in a headspace where you are looking to improve your practice at all times, right? So it improves their understanding of the school culture. They have a better understanding. They have more confidence in their decision making. They make informed decisions, not just, because it was the next lesson in the teacher's guide, right? I don't want that teacher for my children, nor do I want it for anyone's children. I want the teacher who is using evidence. They have confidence and they have evidence in evidence-based decision-making happening in their classrooms. And then it challenges them to think critically about their practices. Once again, that question, why? Why did it succeed? Why did things fail? What were the challenges and why were they present? And then it sharpens their reasoning and problem solving skills. And the bottom one, this is the why. This is why we are, and once again, I'm not trying to rub against those who say, no, we need to consider the whole child. I do not disagree with that at all. However, we hang our hat on and we consume taxpayer dollars behind the notion that we are advancing academic promise for our students. And so any action research has to have evidence that it is accelerating student learning. So that's why I said that AIS definition is really specific to what we do. As an academic institution, we have to advance student learning. And then on this final slide, you'll see action research cohort opportunities that I'm cooking up for next year, not just for our AIS schools, but as part of CDLI and the ELA team of teaching and learning in JCPS. But we're going to look at, action research as a cohort, not a one and done, sit and get kind of PD, but cohorts where we are developing an informed plan to address problems of practice within our work that will ultimately accelerate student learning, because that's, once again, ultimately why we exist. So if you look at each of these links here. If you click on them, they're live and they'll take you to Amazon. Not that I'm promoting Amazon at all, but they'll take you to a quick link that will show you more information about these books. Not that we're sold on these as the books that will anchor the cohorts next year, but they are certainly possibilities. And my final slide, and it's at 3:29, so it's the timing.
You did great.
Winter Hogue. I am the AIS EL lead, instructional lead for Jefferson County Public Schools. My Twitter handle is Sandra L. Hogue, and the hashtag that we use in the AIS family is hashtag AI Success. So if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm accessible, and I don't always have the answers, and I'm comfortable with that, but I am a pretty good thinking partner. So that's it for today.
Thank you, Sandra. I appreciate that. And if you are still in contact with Jean Ann Clyde, please let her know I said hi. She was my professor when I was working to become a teacher at U of L.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Well, I will. I'll let her know. I talked with her just last week, actually, just catching up, checking in on her and on Mark because,
Yeah, and they were both my professors, and Dr. Clyde was my mentor during my student teaching. So, yes.
Oh, I love it. I
Yes.
love it. I love
Yes.
connections.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye.
Okay,
Hello,
goodbye.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Hello, Sarah, and you guys have a great session. I'll keep listening.
Great. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys.
Hi, Sarah. We have Sarah Reed, a great Zone 3 leader here, and I'm going to let you introduce who's with you and what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, let me share this screen. You know how that goes. I'm a Jean Ann Clyde student too. So
Wow, there's a lot of us. Yes.
Small world. Okay, I'm going to share the screen. And here I go.
And you're sharing. Good.
Okay, and now there's something else I'm supposed to do.
Click on the presentation tab where you have that tab up there with the presentation.
It just says stop.
No, don't go above that. On the tab, click there.
On the tab. Okay, why can't I find it today?
Right up on top on your Google, you have where it says Hangouts video call. Then you have one that says JCPS new teacher mentoring. Click right there.
Okay, see there.
Okay,
oh,
good.
Yes, and then I hit
present, and then hit. You're doing good, and click hide right here by the blue button.
Oh yes, I remember that. Hide and then captions.
And close captions. And if you click the drop down. Click the drop down by close captions.
Okay, let me see it. Drop down. Okay.
And go to large.
Large?
Yes, is that an option?
Oh,
go
I
to
see
text
it.
size.
Large.
Yes, large. Yes. Good job.
Good? Woo! Thank you.
Thank you.
I need you to drive me all the time. I always feel a little apprehensive.
It's okay. It is stressful being on live YouTube programming, and but I'm glad we have all these people stepping up and doing it. And the more you do, the more comfortable you get. But yes, nobody wants to try to use tech they don't use all the time in front of everybody. But you did great.
Thank you, sweetheart. Welcome, everybody. Today's presentation is JCPS New Teacher Mentoring Program, and this episode is Mentoring New Teachers through NTI. The presenters today are Dr. Tara Isaacs. She's our Director of Professional Learning and Development. Myself, I wear two hats. Usually I'm the AIC at Coleridge Taylor Montessori, but today I'm putting on the other hat that I also use at Coleridge Taylor is I'm a new teacher mentor. Cameron Sellers, he's my mentee at Coleridge Taylor, first year teacher with Jefferson County Public Schools in the 4th and 5th grade. And Caitlin Ming, I had her last year. She's a second year teacher, but she was my mentee her first year again last year, and she's going to be sharing. Tara, you want to talk?
Sure. Hi, everyone. And thank you all that have joined or stayed on from the last session. If you are on here right now, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you again about that action research. So part of the work with professional development and learning is we're looking at how we shift educator practice in a way that learning translates into student learning. That is the absolute bottom line that is driving everything in our department is what are you doing to shift your practice so you impact students' learning? They're the reason why we're here. So one of the things in our office is we deal with new teacher mentoring, and we look for the best and brightest in our district to pair up with brand new people to the profession, because we're looking at ways to retain our best and brightest so that every student has a high quality teacher in their classroom for instruction. So right before the NTI situation manifested in Jefferson County, we had just administered a new teacher survey, a mentor survey, and then also a principal rating to kind of see if they felt like the mentoring services had provided any growth or movement for their new teachers. And our preliminary findings, one thing was, it was a shout out that overwhelmingly we had positive, it would be between 80 and 90% just of the people who had responded were favorable in how the program was meeting the needs of their building and of the new teachers, which we didn't have poor results in the past. It's just that we had a lot of areas that we needed to fix and that were under construction last year. So this one was a noticeable shift towards the positive with also some suggestions. And part of that was feedback about new teachers in general needing that collaboration time and working with those teachers. And so we thought we would offer a session, and if you've joined us anytime this week, they're pretty much very similar each day. We wanted to offer you just an opportunity to hear directly from one of our all-star mentors who also leads the training of some of our mentoring trainings in the district, and then along with a brand new teacher and a newish teacher, people that have gone through this mentoring program and can pull out the things that are helping them as a new teacher, so that if you're watching as a mentor, you have some ideas that might be helpful. And then if you're watching as a new teacher, you've got a support group of people that you may reach out to in addition to who you have designated in your buildings. So with that, we want to continue to build our program. We're open to feedback. And I think the reason why this program is exponentially improving is because we are taking what we get from feedback in person, in surveys, in formal situations, and we're using it to make our program better. So with that, I'll turn that over to Sarah, Caitlin, and Cameron. And a shout out again to our IT team for helping us through this, navigating these sessions online.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, they are phenomenal. So the JCPS Mentor Program mission, Dr. Isaacs went over it briefly, is to support that professional and personal growth of our new teachers. It's to increase that teacher retention. Every year we hire about 700 teachers. When we want to keep those 700 teachers in those classrooms and in those schools. We also want to provide opportunities for mentor professional learning. Each year we want our mentors to get stronger and stronger, all to support student learning and that achievement. Okay, sorry. Okay, where am I? Okay. Okay, so did I? Okay.
You're good.
Oh, am I good?
You're good.
Okay.
Nope, too good. So if you go down to the bottom left corner, okay, all right.
It's my mouse.
Okay.
Okay. So again, I'm a new teacher mentor. These are some of the strategies that I'm using while in NTI. These are strategies that I use regularly when I'm in the regular classroom setting, school setting, but now I've kind of transitioned into this NTI world. I'm still listening and I'm still supporting. One of the things I do is I co-plan. Co-planning means I will go in and I will ask that mentee to kind of share that Google Classroom that they've kind of set up, and I'll look at their lessons and I'll ask them to invite me into the lessons so that I can kind of look at how that's being organized so that from the student view, it's not overwhelming. And at the same time, sharing resources and strategies to improve that teacher in that online space. Another thing I'm doing is I'm providing resources. When I provide those resources, I
always go back to the JCPS NTI resources. I want my mentee to have that same language. If they go to a PD session, I want them to again have that same language, but also have that same familiarity with those resources. Mentoring virtually, at first it was a shift, and I had to be really creative about it. One of the things that I do is I use Zoom a lot, or I do a Google Meet session, and I'll ask my mentee to kind of share their screen so I can go and look at it from a bird's eye view. Another thing I'll do a lot is I'll go into that Google Classroom and I'll kind of help that mentee with organization. What's the routine for those lessons? What does the workspace look like? And how are they structuring their time in order to create those online classroom experiences?
That's a great point, Sarah. For those of you who may not be aware, in Google Classroom, you have a section called People. And you can go in there and you have the teachers and you can just click on plus, the little plus symbol, and you can add a co-teacher. So you can actually see everything, all the work and all the assignments, which is a great idea when you're a mentor teacher.
It is, exactly. So anyone within the district, so if you have a mentee in another school, that mentee can invite you in. Another thing I do is I support that engaging content. So the NTI sessions, the virtual sessions that are going on, for example, Jamboard, I've been working with mentees to kind of learn how to use that tool. Some of my mentees are sharing in Google Meet. There is a whiteboard. So we're going in together and kind of exploring that and kind of co-constructing how would we place that tool within a Google Classroom lesson.
I love the approach that even though they're learning it to get through NTI, these are all skills that are going to transfer right when we're back in the physical classroom.
Oh, exactly. I hope, my goal is that, this NTI experience is like, and I always tell my mentees, it's really like a learning opportunity. You're not being evaluated. So, you can make mistakes and you can kind of grow at your own pace. So, that kind of helps them to take risks, because all of a sudden, we're not Google certified, but we're becoming Google certified, right, because we've been placed in the Google world.
Yes.
So this slide right here is called the teacher emotional roller coaster graph, and this is kind of what we deal with our new teachers. When they start in August, they'll go into those classrooms and set up those bulletin boards and invite their parents in, and they're all excited. And then it kind of shifts to survival, the day-to-day interactions and multitasking. We try to move our teachers away from that disillusionment, and so that they move into that reflection and rejuvenation. With NTI, when that came upon us, all of a sudden we kind of moved from that reflection stage and we whipped around to anticipation. And we were very soon in the survival stage. Knowing and maybe using technology and then creating lessons using that technology is another thing. So I try to keep my mentees away from that disillusionment component and always kind of engage them in that reflection so that they are really surviving real time. With my mentees, another big strategy that I use is I'm kind of like a mental health practitioner, because I'm checking in to see how they are doing. Sometimes they'll say I'm okay, and I know myself, I'm not always okay in this world. So I will say, share with me what's going on. Share with me some things. And in that avenue, that context, they'll be honest and they'll go, you know what, I'm struggling in this area. So once they share that one struggle area, I'm able to kind of refine my mentoring and go in and strategize to try to help them alleviate that stress.
So some of the ways that I do that is I'm demonstrating. I have my own Google Classroom with lessons in there at each grade level. So I'll kind of share, this is how I've done it. Do you want to take some of this and include it into your classroom? I'm also asking my mentee for data, and it's not data like a map data or a DRA data, but I'm asking them to kind of go in from that bird's eye view. What are their students touching upon and what are their students not touching upon? Because in that Google Classroom, that student has choice, right? Well, they may not orally be having voice, but you can kind of determine based on what they're accessing and what not. And that leads to great conversation of what do you need to do to change that so that students are engaging into that content. At the same time, I'm also supporting those mentees to think about their social emotional health and to establish boundaries. You know, having that computer in the house is really tempting, that you want to work on it all the time. But, you know, stepping back away from that computer and establishing those times, that time management allows, you know, that downtime that new teachers need. And then again, I'm always asking them to regroup in order to stabilize and strategize. You know, this whole context that we're in is really an opportunity to solve problems. So these are some of the prompts that I use. How are things going? I lead it out with that. How comfortable do you feel with using Google Meet, Screencastify? When my teachers didn't really know Screencastify, we went in and we looked at the JCPS virtual lessons in that, and then I challenged them to do a Screencastify and share it with me. So that was kind of like their homework in order to jump into that pool. Nonetheless, I'm always asking, how are you taking care of you? Because again, that emotional health of our new teachers is critically important. Caitlin, do you want to share?
Sure. So my name is Caitlin Ming, and I am a second-year teacher with JCPS. And Sarah Reed was my mentor last year. I think it's important that every new teacher has someone that they can rely on to help them through their first year of teaching. I know in my experience, my mentor had a great knowledge of the resources, which has definitely come in handy now that we are in NTI. Those online tools to increase student engagement are especially important during this time. My mentor, because she has been a teacher for so long, she knew the progression of the standards. She actually helped work on the current standards that just came out. So knowing that progression of the standards and knowing this is what you need to teach students to know now versus what they need to know moving forward. Relationship building with students, that's something that is very important at any grade level. And what's nice about the mentor that I had during my first year of teaching, being in the same building as me, is that she's able to build relationships with some of my students. Another perk of her also being in the building was an observation of my lessons, and she was able to give me feedback for improvement, which really allowed me to self-reflect on my best practices moving forward. Coming right out of college, you're kind of taught all kinds of different things. So just focusing on what you want to know and how you want to be as a teacher, it can lead to your best practices moving forward. Just kind of focusing on those pluses and deltas again with that self-reflection. So I think that the mentoring process is especially important. I know now I am still in constant communication with my mentor to the point where I said, you can't ever leave me. I need you to be my mentor for as long as I'm a teacher. So my hope is that one day, because I've lived through this process, that one day I'll get to be a mentor to someone that is entering the new education field.
Thank you, Caitlin. Cameron, do you want to share?
Yeah, I'd be glad to share. So I'm a first-year teacher as well, or not as well, excuse me. I'm a first-year teacher, and Ms. Reed was also my mentor. And it was really nice to have a mentor during your very first year of teaching because they really kind of help funnel the resources you learn from college. In college, you learn so many different best practices, and the education field and the academic standards have changed throughout the course of college, and it can be kind of a confusing time to enter the field and knowing what was not as effective as another strategy. And it was really nice to have a mentor kind of be able to just funnel that down to what would be best practices within your specific classroom. It was also nice to have my mentor be in the very same building as me, simply because she was able to build relationships with my students, like Caitlin said, and she can adapt the lessons, help me adapt the lessons to differentiate properly for these students. So she would do that a lot more than just the required lesson observations. She'd do that at least weekly, if not every day. We'd be checking in with each other. And again, there's a lot of things you don't really know about going into or coming out of college. You taught lessons in college, you had observations, but you're not exactly sure how long a lesson would be, and if it's at the same level of rigor that you want it to be for the academics required for the classroom. So it was really nice to have somebody with a tremendous amount of experience to be able to apply to finding that timing and that rigor of the lessons. And also, it's nice to have a mentor, specifically in times like these when the whole classroom got flipped upside down. You're now digital learning 100%. And, I feel like I would probably be a lot more confused than I am now if I didn't have a mentor be able to help me through that. So essentially just the mentoring process, being able to have that in your very first year of teaching, I think it's become really effective. And I think just the mentors in general, they really care about the future generation of educators. And I think that's their overall goal. So I was really pleased to be able to have that in my first year of teaching.
Listening to you all, I'm a little jealous. I had a great mentor my first year of teaching, but the way it worked then, it was more, I felt like my mentor was constantly evaluating me and getting me through this graded K-tip process. But it sounds like yours is there to check in on you, to support you, and so I really like what it has become, and with the mentor teachers. And I'm sure you obviously know how lucky you are to have Sarah. So yes.
Well, that's the great thing about the JCPS mentoring program is it is not evaluative. It is, we're like wind beneath someone's wings. These two teachers, they had ruby red slippers, but sometimes when you're placed in the classroom all at once and then, you have to put all the pieces together and kind of work in that fashion. And, it's overwhelming at times. And JCPS has a lot of things. A lot of times I tell people, JCPS is like coming off in an airplane and at O'Hare Airport, like you're trying to find the next terminal, but you have all these things coming at you at once. And with a mentor in the building, that mentor can kind of help guide a new teacher, what's important, what can you put to the side, what can you focus on, what can't you what do you have to put to the side. So these two teachers have grown. Not just through me, but if they had other mentors from the program, certainly they would have grown as well. There's probably other success stories out there. I just know that there are, because the mentors in the JCPS cadre are so wonderful.
I'm going to jump in and piggyback on this and just point out that some of the feedback that we obtained last year from our actual mentors were that they were looking for actual strategies that might be different than their years of experience. We all have different tools in our little basket of things that we carry each year to year. But people were looking for more than just getting text to study on their own. They were looking for application during trainings and then an opportunity to network and to be able to kind of learn from one another during those kinds of mentor times. The premise behind the work was collaboration with multiple departments across the district. We are running point on the project at the Professional Development and Learning Office, but we collaborate with every department that you can imagine as far as them wanting to be a support to our new teachers. And we'd be remiss without giving a shout out to our Human Resources Department for the recruitment and going on those visits with them to recruit high quality candidates. It is intensive competition right now. So for us to be able to pull in the talent that we have in Cameron and Caitlin and among the many other people in our district, and then be able to retain, I mean, this is what we're trying to do, not only for the retention number and to hit a data point, but because we want the best teachers in front of our students. And that is the way our profession survives.
Clearly. With the JCPS new teacher mentoring program, this year again, we worked in a phase 1 program. We were orienting the new mentors to the program and working through 2 texts and learning strategies to work with mentees, really building that relationship component in order to really stabilize our new teachers and to help them to shine in ways that they're able to. This next year, teachers that have had the mentoring training, if they again are mentors this next year, will move into a phase 2 program, and we will still continue with our phase 1 program.
The biggest testament to what you all are doing, I love that Caitlin said she hopes to be a mentor one day. I think that's great. Obviously, it's a great experience for her, and she wants to carry it on. Maybe Caleb too, I bet.
Yes, I'm hoping that Caitlin will, and Cameron as well, because we're planting seeds. You know, enabling a program to grow is to have our new teachers take on those leadership roles, because again, we never know that new teacher that's trying to figure things out and establish themselves might be the next Dr. Polio, who, you know, you just never know. They're going to be counselors in the district. They may be principals, but they need that supporting relationship to help build their capacity.
So true. And it's been, you know, there are teachers being hired last week, 2 weeks ago. And I can't imagine. And we don't know what's going to happen in August. And so, yes, it's great that these people are going to have someone that is as supportive as you and the other mentors.
Yeah, well, we don't have KTIP. You know, the KTIP program is not in existence right now. So I think it's very commendable that JCPS stepped up and created this new teacher mentor program. It's not exactly like the KTIP program in that it's not evaluative. It's built on relationships and support and using best practice and evidence strategies.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments in the chat box?
I've been watching the chat, a lot of people singing your praise. But yeah, I don't think we had any questions. I was hoping maybe we had some of those brand new teachers are out there and they're looking to learn something. Maybe they might have joined us, but maybe next time. But thank you very much. I enjoyed talking to you again, Sarah, and everybody. Good to see you. Thank you for joining us on the JCPS Digital Learning Channel. We will be back tomorrow with some more live programming, some on-demand programming, some new material. And if you missed this today, when is the next time you will be presenting this session? Is this the one time?
No, we'll be at 3:30 again tomorrow. Today's hump day, right? So tomorrow's
Yes.
Thursday.
Tomorrow's Thursday.
Kind of melt together in the NTI world. And then Friday, I think we're at 11:30. We've got a morning slot.
Okay, that's great. So 2 more chances to see them in case you missed or just joined us later. But everybody enjoy the rest of your day. We hope to see you back here tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.